Cool, man.
You want to be called Josh?
Sure. Yeah, that's
okay. So Josh, this is Seamus and Adrian and myself.
Gents.
How you doing today, sir?
Good. How are you guys doing?
Oh, can't complain.
Still here.
Yeah.
The eternal pessimist.
Come on, man. That's optimism you're hearing. It's optimism.
So you were Hamilton police, right, Josh?
Yeah. So I worked in the Hamilton Police 2011 to 2017. Not there anymore. Fully out.
Yeah. And I heard, I don't know if this is true, but do you run like Hamilton Cop Watch or something? Yeah.
I'm doing Hamilton Cop Watch. I'm taking a little bit of a listening break on that one. I think with COVID, I was going to police service board meetings and stuff like that, just tracking what these guys are doing. They have so many problems there. So I just thought, I'm in a unique position where I can try to change that from the outside. They probably don't like me very much doing that, but I don't like lazy cops. So that's the thing.
So was this your reason for getting out? You kind of saw the problems from the other side and just decided you didn't want to be a part of it anymore?
No, I think, I saw problems festering for so long, but when you work on the front line as a patrol cop, it's kind of convoluted, right? Like you're not seeing everything with a lot of clarity. You're working shifts. Information is disconjointed and there's rumors about people and all kinds of shit. And, you really just got to focus on what's in front of you.
Mm-hmm.
And you're responding to calls, right? You're working, like I worked all the time as a patrol cop. I did a lot of overtime. But it came to a point where my mental health wasn't, it was a factor, right? And it was contributing to my mental health being in the police there. So I left and, I didn't start Hamilton Cop Watch right away. I took a break. I really reflected on everything that I had done while I was there. And, people started reaching out, right? Because I just started I published my story, people reaching out saying, I worked in this division, same thing, or this happened and that happened. And then once you start reflecting on it with a lot more clarity, I can't sit idly by and let them, go on the path they're going.
Well, I got to say that's respectable because, we've talked a lot, especially with everything that went down in Nova Scotia. We've been talking a lot about sort of the idea of the thin blue line and how a lot of cops are sort of covering for each other, even when it seems to make each other look bad or make the department look bad. So it is respectable that you're willing to at least come out and talk about these issues.
Yeah. I think, in Ontario, for example, and generally everywhere is going to have similar laws. Police officers are prohibited from talking about it, right? You have the Police Services Act. They have like catch-alls, right? So insubordination, whatever the case is. So cops do want to talk, and oftentimes they'll leak stuff anonymously. But if I would not be able to do what I'm doing today, if I was still employed as a police officer, they would put a squash to that quick. And it's not just like asking. If you keep doing it, they'll arrest you. Same thing happened to me. You put your mental health into contention and say, "Oh, I think you're going crazy to be doing what you're doing." They've done that before. They'll surely do it again. So
that seems like a common ammo to whenever they find someone that's willing to talk against them, they always go to something with a mental health issue.
Yeah, it is like, it's not common necessarily, right? I was told that I was the second person in recent history by the union guys that they used somebody's mental health as a tool for whether it be punishment. I don't even know, like just morons. But they've done it to other people too, right? They say, "Oh, you're going crazy," and whatever the case is. It's such a weird environment. Thinking that you're police officers, you're on a team, and then you just watching people and watching your managers screw over constables. To the topic of the thin blue line, that is such a convoluted issue, and not necessarily one that is so simple as to say cops don't rat on cops. Cops get arrested by cops all the time. Like cops rat on other cops for stuff that should be ratted on, and then they'll make stuff up or embellish things or overblow things to get cops in trouble so they can get promoted. The thin blue line, it's simultaneously, it does exist, and it's exactly the opposite. That's what I'd say.
Do you have a lot of experience with the RCMP, interactions with the RCMP?
No, I think Hamilton has an RCMP detachment. I think it's like a small, like just a office with a few cops, and maybe they use it for investigations, like their higher level stuff. I don't think I ever directly worked with the RCMP, but coming out of the military and being in the police culture, you hear a lot about RCMP people. And I was told by a drug detective, he had graduated their RCMP depot, like I think, and he went directly to be a drug detective, which I said, that's weird. Like, how do you just go from depot to be a drug detective?
Wow.
Yeah. And that was from him directly. And it's weird because I'm like, if you don't know how to do a traffic stop, I don't know how you're doing these complex drug investigations or national security or anything. But like, despite not having experience with the RCMP directly, the problems exist everywhere, man. It's like municipal, provincial, federal, it doesn't matter. They're all compromised, really.
Yes. Yes. Do you find that it's a bureaucratic, top, like, down problem?
Well, okay, yes. Like, so let's put it into context for that. You have the Hamilton police who can't keep their shit together. Can I swear on this?
Oh, yeah.
Okay?
Oh, yeah.
Fuck it. The Hamilton police are all fucked up. So that is one city. Each of the 3 divisions is within 10 minutes driving, and yet they're fucked up. So you scale that up to the OPP, let's say. You have detachments all over the fucking province. And, I've talked to our OPP officers now that are like, the OPP is especially messed up. And it's like, well, how could they not be, right? If a municipal service can't keep their stuff together, you scale that out and you have detachments in, you got to drive 30 hours to get to these things. There can be no expectation of, direct accountability. And then you scale it up even further to the RCMP. How does the commissioner, even if they were inclined to introduce accountability, do it properly?
Because I've heard from some people, say, and here I live in Calgary, and I knew somebody who worked for a long, long time with the Calgary Police Services, just as a civilian, and very, very pro police.
Mm-hmm.
But you couldn't say a bad word about the police, basically, ever.
Mm-hmm.
However, they had an extremely different opinion of the RCMP and the bureaucratic political side at the top, and said that that is absolutely corrupt and a mess. Do you have similar type views?
Well, it's funny because wasn't Calgary just a year or two ago talking about a mutiny? Like, I think it was frontline officers in Calgary that were like, this place is so messed up, we don't even want to come to work anymore, and we're not going to. I'm pretty sure it was Calgary, because I have a friend that works in Calgary, and I asked him about it, and he said, it's not as bad as the media makes it out to be. But that's interesting, because I experienced some of the same things, right? Like, I voiced concerns about the Hamilton police while I was a police officer. When you're sitting door to door, you just finish a call with somebody, you're like, how can management do this to this person? And the person completely agrees, the other cop. I'm in a uniform, they're in a uniform, they are fucking on board. But when I left the Hamilton police, all of a sudden the things I'm saying, I'm disgruntled. Somebody even called me anti-police, or that I covert with criminals now. So it's that, it's like hive mind, and it's cognitive dissonance. Like, we're fine. The RCMP, they're fucked. I mean, that's not how it works.
Okay. So can you share with us maybe some of the experiences that you've had of, corruption or type things that you find doing Hamilton Police Watch, like what you've come across, or what you came across in your career?
Well, it's interesting. In my career, I watched so many instances of managerial abuse, is what I would call it, where management gets an agenda on people and then they start pushing. And it's funny, when I started with the Hamilton police, when I got hired, my dad says, "Oh, Hamilton, I heard they're really corrupt." And I said, "Man, I don't know. Like, I'm a constable. I go to work 40 hours a week, usually more with overtime. The fucking radio goes off. I go, yeah, go ahead. And I go to calls. I don't take money from drug dealers. I've never seen anybody do that." But you start hearing things in the news, like an inspector gets arrested, or there's an allegation that a superintendent sexually assaulted a female on the police services board. And I don't even know who that superintendent is, but I'm going, is this place fucking for real? So, but like, you don't become consumed in it because you don't have time and you don't have access to the information, right? The information is compartmentalized. But, little did I know when I started, there was a cop named Paul Manning who was undercover in Hamilton. He was an undercover police officer in Hamilton Police. And everything that he has alleged now has been confirmed through other sources who have knowledge. And they say, yeah, everything he's saying is true. He was reporting on corrupt cops. He got his cover blown, seemingly intentionally. He got half beat to death, went down a path, mental health. They worked him. They did a search warrant at his house. They said he had a grow up, and he didn't. That search warrant is still sealed. So I'm going to work. I don't even know who Paul Manning is. Little do I know that management has their teeth into him. And then they start putting up, in about 2015, posters around the station saying, oh, watch out for this cop. He's former cop. He's, off work. He's crazy. They put posters up. So I go, who the fuck is this guy? And I asked some people that I knew, good cops, right? Good cops, but the hooks were in. They're like, oh, he's crazy, dude. He's crazy. Saying all this crazy shit. But I'm an inquisitive person. So I looked up what he's saying, and fucking lo and behold, year after year after year, everything that he was alleging was coming true. The players that he was identifying, the problems, I started going, and then this is where the disillusionment started happening. I go, wait, who are these people that are around and especially above me? Because I didn't see it myself in a big way. You see some excessive force here and there. You see managerial abuse. I see females getting harassed, right? In 2016, I mentioned it on Derek's show, a uniformed sergeant rubbed his dick on a woman's face in the station. And they swept it under the rug. And that young lady was forced to either quit or sign an NDA. Nobody even fucking knows. So you start seeing this stuff and you're going, what the fuck is going on around here? And then, it just affected me so greatly with everything. But then that's the thing. When I left, well, then I followed Paul on Twitter. His name is Mob Infiltrator. And I greatly encourage people to support that because he's got balls. I mean, I heard people saying, I got balls for doing what I'm doing. He was like the pioneer in Hamilton. Mm-hmm. And, I don't even know if I'd be doing this today if it wasn't in support and, for support of the same initiative. Because seeing that he's left out alone and that management's calling him crazy, people know that he's telling the truth now. Cops have told me that he's telling the truth, but nobody will touch him with a 10-foot pole because they don't want management to be into them. So that's my, things got to change. It's unacceptable.
Just what you say there about how it seems like his cover got blown intentionally. I mean, it's kind of shocking to think that the people at the top could just turn on their own in such a way. I mean, I suppose as more and more I've looked into it, I'm becoming less surprised by that. But it just shows sort of the vitriol vengeance that'll come from the top if you are one of these people that go against the grain, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
Well, sorry, you got a question there?
No, I'm just agreeing. Sorry.
Yeah, I think, no, sorry. People looking at the police service, so let's say the RCMP, you'd think it's like a homogenous group. And if one is corrupt, then they all must be on board. And I think I kind of explained how that's not the case. Squad of very good cops that is abusive, but nobody's doing anything. You're going to have a sergeant that rubs his dicks on people's faces. You're going to have a sergeant that makes up evidence in search warrants, in vice and drugs. Then in child abuse, there's some guy, taking 8-hour lunches. The chief is, so you have all these little silos that aren't necessarily operating in unison. They may not even be aware of each other's existence. They might overlap here and there, so if you're undercover and you're saying, hey, that inspector's taking money, but the person you're telling is friends with that inspector, you might not even be participating. You drop that info to the inspector, all of a sudden loose lips sink ships, and fucking things start moving against you, right? So it's not necessarily like people turn, but it's like a concerted effort to fail to acknowledge the problems that are facing it, the profession, and just operating in ignorance. They're feigning ignorance. They just go, what? I don't know. That's what needs to change.
Now, when it came to things you saw in there, we were talking a little bit about corruption, but I also wanted to discuss about the idea of covering up crimes. Maybe that's from negligence of how a cop reacted, or maybe it's just they committed a crime and they were burying the evidence, because that's one thing, because we've been doing a lot of looking into the events that surrounded the Nova Scotia shooting. And that's one thing that with that, as we've looked at the evidence, as we looked at what is being edited out of interviews, what's not being said compared to what's available in the public, it seems quite clear that the RCMP are trying to cover up for not doing their job. Now, what was your experience with witnessing that sort of taking place in Hamilton?
So, well, with the RCMP, they're vetting things, right? And it doesn't look good from what they're vetting, but it could be in the interest of the sanctity of a current or future investigation, potentially, right? They may not want to let those names go out. I saw, they're looking for guns, ammo, and something vetted, something blacked out. That, if that leaked to the public, that might identify a suspect, potentially. So I'm not going to suggest that they're covering it up for nefarious intent, or you're going to let information out slowly. But I have the expectation that the cops that shot at the fire hall, they don't want you to hear about that. They don't. Because then they're going to have to fight the union and say you didn't train properly. All that stuff's going to come out. All the things I talked about already. I expect accountability, realistically, but it's not going to. So let me explain a way when you talk about like covering up crimes. But let's talk about the front end. So just like an excessive force type of situation, like what we just saw in Minneapolis. So let's say I have informants, okay? So I want to talk to an informant and get information about a criminal, probably a higher level criminal. When I'm talking to the informant, their name's not going in my notebook. It's going in a separate notebook that's just for informants. If that leads to, and I've had cases where that happens, if that leads to a criminal offense of somebody who's dangerous and you used an informant's information, you not only protect their identity directly, you have to protect their identity indirectly. So it's like, is this sole sourced? Are you the only person that knows this? You really protect it. And there's been cases, even in high level cases, where charges are dropped because the only way to get a conviction would be with source evidence or informant evidence that would identify the informant. So let's talk about police now. I just told you how they treat police officers, right? So let's say you're at a call and a cop injures somebody. The SIU comes in and the SIU says, okay, you were there. What did you see? Now, let's say you saw it, but what happens next? The SIU records it. They write down what you said, and what you say is going to be disclosed to the service, and that means it's going to go through the gossip factory. So let's say you go, yeah, you know what? I saw that cop. He punched him in the head way too hard. The SIU goes, okay, thank you. Now, everybody's going to know that you said that. You're not protected. You're not guaranteed safety from managerial abuse or from employee. I had a case where there was an instance where a young female officer did that. She said, I saw the other guy do it. It wasn't me. I didn't touch this guy, or I didn't say that, whatever the case was. She was going to calls for a year. She's pulling over cars, no backup. Nobody would back her up. So it's not just management. It's like that kind of bullshit. So the SIU sits in front of you and they say, tell us what happened. Well, are you going to fucking protect that officer like you would an informant? No, they're going to tell everybody what you said. So whether or not the officer gets charged, you're a fucking rat. And enjoy going to calls without backup because everybody says, oh, they're a rat. Like, fuck, they ratted on that person. They weren't there, right? So that's a big issue. Like that there's no whistleblower protection, even at an immediate level. Like when I talked about mob infiltrator or Paul Manning, that's like high level whistleblowing. That's like you got a story to tell. I read the statement of claim in his lawsuit. He's suing the police and city and everybody, rightfully so. It's tens of pages long, probably like 40, 50 pages. I think I read through it. So, but even in a one incident pattern, the SIU comes in, tell us what happened. Fuck, I don't know. Right? What do you say? Do you want to get fucked for the rest of your career? And the SIU may not even charge the person with your evidence because they'll do that. They'll charge cops when they shouldn't be charged. That just happened in Waterloo, and now the cop is suing the SIU, rightfully so. Or they'll not charge when they should. So whether or not you give the evidence, you're fucked. So that's a scary predicament. And like looking back, I'm going, wow, that's such a weird predicament for cops to be in.
Mm-hmm. It's almost like it beats like these people, the cops are supposed to be some of the best people out in society because they're supposed to be there for us when we need them the most. And a lot of them are, but it's almost like the good ones are almost having that good side of them beat out of them every day by policies that make it a risk for them to be good.
I think that's absolutely the case. And I think that you can probably count on most cops, even if they're nefarious internally, that if you need help, they'll show up and help you. It's not like they're just going to say, screw you. The problem though, is that when there's a mishap, when there is excessive force, they're really put in a shitty predicament where, yeah, like, what do? Do you throw your fucking career in the interest of maybe the cop getting a charge? Maybe like it just, yeah. And you're right. Like the good cops become very apathetic very quickly because, the public generally supportive, but like if you're getting in fights with like meth heads all the time and just like having people spit on you, and generally you're dealing with something 50% of the people in the call don't like you.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I always say this about traffic cops. I can imagine radio, you sit there, you work very slowly. I don't know if I can blame people for that. It's a defense mechanism. We're all humans, right?
Nope. Yeah, you got a good point on that. I mean, I do see how when you're put in that situation, you could become apathetic. I mean, it's not what you want in your cops, but again, seeing it from the human perspective, I can see where that ends up coming from. And you did kind of confirm what I was kind of thinking about the situation, which is that when you're in a dangerous job, such as a police officer, one thing you want to make sure you have is you want to make sure that other cops have your back. And when you see that, these other cops aren't going to come to your aid when you need it, that could be one reason that you're sort of, there's this conspiracy of silence, if you want to call it that. Now, this may be a bit of a loaded question, but how do you think this whole thing got started? I don't really have a better word for it, but how do you think this whole idea of not reporting other cops and all this got started?
So, there's so many things, there's so many moving currents, I guess I would say, that, I always, it's super easy to jump on specific issues, right? And be like, well, that shouldn't happen because information should be compartmentalized. But those are very specific things. The best way that I can put the highest level approach is to say accountability, right? If there was accountability, everything would be less problematic. So, if you have a cop who does excessive force, take them off the road or make cops get insurance. And if they get these complaints, their insurance goes up. You start taking money out of people's pockets, they'll start acting right. Like, do you speed, through a residential area? You got to pay insurance. That's something I read on Reddit. Somebody had that comment, right? Make cops get insurance. I think it's a great idea. It's a super good idea, right? Because you actually like incentivizing cops to not get complaints. And that might be problematic if, because then you get into the same kind of predicament, maybe, where cops don't want to go to that dangerous call because they might have to use force, insurance goes up. It's a novel concept. I don't know if it's workable, but accountability, like everything gets solved if people get punished for what they're doing. And they're really hot to punish, in terms of comparatively constables. If a constable does something, they're fucked, right? Like most of the time, unless management just doesn't want to deal with it or whatever. We had a case where a cop punched a guy, guy spit in his mouth. He was handcuffed, and the cop punched him and take him to the ground. And he got charged with assault and really rang. But then you're like, okay, well, if that's where we sit, if you rub your dick on somebody's forehead, I think you should be catching a charge too. You sexually assault somebody, catch a charge. If you beat somebody, or you're being negligent, they really, as you go up in rank, and this is, of course, it makes sense. It's like a little monarchy. That's why I call these banana republics now. They just pick and choose who they charge. So they'll lean all over constables, mostly comparatively. But as it's their friends that are getting in shit, don't count on it. They don't even want to talk about it.
It's probably because at a higher level, maybe it makes them look much worse.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
yeah, exactly. You know, how could you have this person promoted? There was an individual who was a sergeant, and 14 or 15 females. This is right before I got hired. Came out and alleging sexual harassment, but I heard some things about it. It was like stalking and like weird shit outside of work. So if you can get 14 females to say one thing about one person, I'm going to look at it with some validity. And the union told them to piss off and everything. And it's like, it's because he was a sergeant and he never stopped being a sergeant. So, and they settled, like there was a lawsuit and stuff. They gave them all their jobs, any jobs they wanted. And I think there was a monetary settlement, but like, how do you stay a sergeant? How the fuck do you do that? How do you get 14 people to complain the same complaint about sexual harassment? And from what I heard, it was a little bit beyond that, like actually a lot of it, but, and then stay in a fucking leadership capacity. That's what blows my mind. That's insane. So yeah, like it does make them look bad, because if you punish it, you're like, well, why did you make that person a sergeant? Was there no factors that, showed that?
Is there like, definitely I can see with the RCMP because of their history and sorry, I keep going on about the RCMP, but that's kind of what we're looking at, right? And is there the history with Hamilton Police Department that it becomes a culture to protect the identity of the Hamilton Police Department and to throw people under the bus no matter what to protect them? Because I definitely see that in the RCMP. They will throw anybody under the bus as long as that name isn't damaged. I mean, I think a lot of it is power and the contracts that they're getting.
Yeah.
Would you agree that that's something, or did you find that in Hamilton?
I would say that, you'd think on a first look that, yeah, they just want to protect the sanctity of the brand. But I think at another level, you're looking at a pattern of demonstrating that you will suppress information that leads to potential liabilities. The city of Hamilton is the corporation of the city of Hamilton, right? Are you a police officer with, you're given powers that are written federally and provincially, but you're in this little fiefdom, right? You're in a corporation. And yes, you're a police officer, and you think when you sign up, you take an oath and you're in court and there's the judge with the frilly and it's like some kind of official thing. But then when you get there, it's like, wait a minute, am I a tax collector and the enforcement arm, an agency of the city and their city councilors and the people that they pick to be the chief, and they're getting kickbacks and the chief will ignore it? So the next chief is groomed to ignore it so that they can pick who the next superintendent is. Yeah, you're a law enforcement officer, but what are you really? Like, what are you really? I think you're an overpowered, comparatively, law enforcement agency for a corporation. It would be like if Walmart could just had laws when you walk in and they could arrest you, right? Walmart security can't just walk up and say, unless you're stealing or trespassing, right? But they can't arrest you, imprison you.
Now, I just wanted to ask you a few questions about the events that took place in Nova Scotia as a cop. I don't know how much you've paid attention to it, but if we've been looking into it, it seems very clear that the RCMP didn't do their job. They didn't go into Portapique when they should have, and people died because of it. It seems that they knew more about Wortman than they're leading on. So just, I guess, as a general overview to start, what were your thoughts about the situation that took place in Nova Scotia?
So I've been out to New Brunswick. I think I was to Gagetown. I drove out there. It's sparsely populated, I'm assuming, in Nova Scotia and anywhere outside of Halifax. So in terms of their failures, I think I have to look at like their operational readiness. Like, how many detachments are there? What size of an area does one officer is responsible for? How many dispatch systems are there? Is it all the RCMP in Nova Scotia, or is it city by city? I can think of a myriad, almost unlimited amount of factors which would occur, like contribute to the delayed response, I guess is a way of saying it. If you went on a shooting spree in downtown Toronto, you'd probably have the entire division on you within 3 minutes. Same with Hamilton, right? There was a shooting, you'd have 8 cruisers there inside 60 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know how it looks out there in terms of their disposition and where they're structured. But, you start talking about the emergency response, the notification system. Why wasn't that used? I think is a very fair question. Obviously, shooting at the fire hall is moronic. And I think that, I think, again, without information, that is a training failure. But of course, because they're not talking about it, people are saying, oh, that was the RCMP. Or they were shooting, that was Wortman shooting at, because they're not explaining it. People are kind of leading their own path, which is expected, right? And and then of course, everything's being vetted out with the information about knowing more about him. But I think what we can glean from the search warrant, even though it was vetted, was that he has a relative who's an ex-RCMP officer.
Ooh,
and
multiple.
If that's relevant, that's relevant. If that's
multiple
multiple ones, right?
Yep.
If that's making its way into a search warrant, that's relevant. It's not just like, that's not just like an aside, right? Shit. Who doesn't have a family member once removed, twice removed, that's a cop or something, right? So if that's getting written in a search warrant, they're sparse on words in a search warrant. You got to be concise and succinct, right? That's problematic that's in there.
Do you find that, so you've read through the search warrants, have you read through them all?
I breezed through it. I read them, but I didn't make notes and compare. I feel like when you do that, if you really want to figure out what's going on, you got to go through with tabs and say, this is this person at this time. You try to draw a chronological map of when information was tendered and from who. I didn't do that. I just read through it quickly. So I don't remember everything that was in it, but I remember the important parts that I saw.
See, because in reading through it, I see it, I've got one of them in front of me right now. I find that the level of redactions in here, unbelievable. We're talking about an investigation into a dead man. The possible investigations that could spin out from this are, if we're believing that narrative, which I tend not to believe given all the evidence I'm looking at, the decals on the car, the uniforms supplied, and there is one that's also from Halifax Regional Police. He also had a badge. The guns, which I find extremely problematic because they won't even specify the caliber of the weapon used. That seems, some of these redactions are needless. Unbelievably needless. Say I'll just read a passage here where they're talking about Chad Morrison, the officer who was shot. Near exit 9, Highway 2, near the EHS station, Constable Chad Morrison, a peace officer and member with the RCMP, was shot blank times. Constable Morrison was shot blank. Constable Morrison survived the shooting. Now, I'm sorry, any kind of investigation angle that I'm coming at it from, there is zero need to withhold that information. Zero. Yeah, because Gabriel Wortman is supposedly the assailant. He's dead. We're not going to have a trial. Why are we talking about how many times that he shot being a secret?
So I'll go backwards on that one. So the first time, the redactions on how many times he was shot, just quickly thinking about it, maybe for, I guess, being nice to the family. Maybe, I don't know, maybe his condition is deteriorating. Maybe they didn't want that out there. That does seem like something strange to vet, but I simply don't know, right? And if there's any inference drawn about the situation from that, I think that's safe to ask. I don't know if I would say definitively that because they blanked that out, that what that means, right? I don't know. It does seem weird though that they would blank that out. I don't know why that would happen. On the topic of the firearm calibers, usually, right? We know the governments, and especially the current government, they're all about it. They're all about talking about the guns and all this kind of stuff. Very abnormal, I would say, that they're not doing that. Now, the one, maybe something, a hypothetical that I can envision is that they are trying to source the location of where these guns were brought in from or sold from. Maybe there are multiple dealers. And like I said, with the informant thing, if they identify the gun and the caliber, maybe that source will evaporate and they'll know right from the news, like, oh, maybe he had I heard he had a Beretta M58, M85 or whatever, the big 50 cal sniper rifle. I had heard rumors that he had that. Well, maybe there's not too many people that sell that gun. And maybe they didn't know that they sold it to Gabriel Wortman. So maybe the cops are saying, okay, we're just going to vet all the guns so that one particular gun doesn't stand out. And, we'll leave the public to, be in mystery and they can talk about it on YouTube. But maybe they're working a very proprietary source of a certain firearm. As a hypothetical, I don't know anything about that. But it is abnormal because the current government loves talking about fucking black scary guns and machine guns and all this crazy shit. So it is weird that they're not saying what it is. Yeah, but there could be explanations.
It seems to vary from warrant to warrant. Certain warrants will have the information, and another warrant they'll redact it. And to the best of my knowledge, I've gone through the criminal code on the redaction business, and there is zero reason to. Sorry, I come from a very legal background, so there's zero reason to redact this information if there's no ongoing investigation or to protect a person's identity. Chad Morrison getting shot blank times has zero information. Like, you're not protecting anybody's identity. It's not an informant. It's not an ongoing investigation into, it doesn't matter what kind of weapon he was shot with. They're not saying that. They're just saying how many times. Whether it's 2 or 5 or 0, that's public interest, because anything that becomes any of these documents, they become public realm information. As soon as they apply to the court, that's public realm information, and all the people have access to that information. And yet the RCMP repeatedly will sit in court. The Quebec Mosque is another one I'm very familiar with, and they will fight to say, no, we cannot give you any copies of the warrants. And then they'll bleed it out slowly because, and it's very slow, because they were ordered to release all of them three weeks ago, I believe. Yep. And then they came back a week late from their deadline and said, oh, well, we'll have one tomorrow. And then they did release one. And then we've gotten a couple more subsequently, but honestly, it's this veil of secrecy that they seem to live under. And frankly, the only thing I can see is to protect their own image in all of this, because they, to the best of my knowledge, and again, this is speculative, but there's a very strong case against them currently right now for negligence in death.
Yeah.
Very strong.
I think what's happening a lot is, like, we're seeing past RCMP behavior that once everything is done, the investigations are done. Like, I think a lot of people are tagging me in High River, is it called, and where the guns were all taken. Yeah. Where they weren't complying with anything there. And it's like, when it's happening, who knows, right? But once it is finished, everybody seems to have always the opinion that the RCMP are concealing things and not doing their job for the whatever interest they're beholden to, which isn't the public. So I think what we're seeing now is that very same thing. The preface that is all these instances where the RCMP has lost the public's confidence. That there is the tragedy. That is what needs to be changed. It's not necessarily this particular incident. They might have an explanation for why. I don't even know, right? Maybe it is to save face about the number of times the guy was shot. I know how to read vetted documents, but you never know the intent of why. There might be ongoing investigations. There should be, quite frankly, even from what we've gleaned. The other investigation should be following for the source of the guns, any drug dealing or growing that he was doing, and any source of the RCMP stuff or any assistance from the RCMP, even inadvertent. So there should be ongoing investigations right now. So sorry, go ahead.
Oh, just sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
But CERT is the overseeing civilian, quote, civilian body, independent body. And yet the 4 members they have a few friends, I would think. The other one is a current sitting RCMP member and one Halifax regional member. Now, that doesn't strike me at all as independent. It doesn't strike me at all as a civilian oversight body. And when I go through the amount of cases that are going pending or completed by CERT and the details of the investigations that they are carrying out, which include gang rape, massive drug dealing, we're talking about in a province of 1 million people, not even. This is unbelievable. And this is the oversight body who's going to be investigating 2 investigations I think they have ongoing, which is the fire hall shooting and what was the other one? I think it's to do with the uniform
Enfield, I think.
Sorry?
Wasn't
Enfield.
it the shooting at Enfield?
Yeah.
Oh, right. Yeah, that's right. I think they kicked the other one back to the RCMP. So the RCMP is just investigating themselves, which is completely ridiculous. But even if it was to go outside of the RCMP, it's going over to this, quote, independent body, which is anything but independent. What's your opinion?
Yeah, no, if it's fully staffed by ex-RCMP, I mean, not to say that nothing would ever happen. They're gonna push metrics, right? Because they don't want to look like they're totally biased. So I'm sure they will push metrics, but you'd have the expectation, reasonably so, that they will not introduce accountability to the RCMP. But then it's like, okay, what amount of civilians or impartial people would we need to constitute the CERT team before there's an expectation? And even if that's the case, who's CERT beholden to? Are they beholden to the province? Well, the province may have a vested interest in avoiding lawsuits. So even if it was fully staffed with civilians, even if you take people from a different country, but you're paying them and it comes down, we're squashing this, I just don't know if there's any viable configuration that would to have an right? We were told that there are SIU investigators who will let anything go by the police. Then we were told that there are SIU investigators who will do anything to charge police. So, that's what's troubling, right? Like, as an aside, not to mention the RCMP, but if you do something and the wrong SIU comes down, you catch a charge for it potentially just because they have a bent. And if there's a little thing about it, they'll throw a charge at you. But if you get again, not a good SIU, they might let something heinous go because they're bootlickers or they're ex-police and they're so groupthinked and they're just like that high and mighty status. So I don't know. Yeah, that doesn't sound good if there's only 4. I know in Ontario, the SIU, they had like a year's backlog. It was taking them years to clear reports. And I think Doug Ford mandated they have to do it within a year or something to that effect. But even still, like a year to do a pretty cut and dry investigation. But the one in RCMP, I don't know how in Nova Scotia that many people is going to manage that big a task. I would have an expectation that given what's going on and given the lack of public trust, they would bring in other people from another province or a municipal or something like that to come out and report directly to the PMO or the premier to make sure it's going right. That's wishful thinking though, right? That's what I would do to instill public confidence. Say, listen, we're going to bring an outside team in to either, sidekick or monitor the RCMP, and we're going to make sure it's done right so there's nothing being hidden. But it's like they're totally tone deaf. Everybody is questioning what the RCMP did and is vetting and what they're doing now. Everybody's questioning, and I have yet to see anything that would quell that anxiety and introduce confidence for the RCMP.
Absolutely. Like the more I dig into the RCMP and stuff, I was going back and I was just talking about it on the stream tonight about Don Dunphy. I'm not sure if you're familiar with him. He was a guy who sent out some tweets, a disgruntled man, and sent a tweet to the Premier of Newfoundland. He would send them all around all the time, but I mean, they were harmless. And one of the the constabulary of Newfoundland, which is their provincial force, was dispatched to have a visit with this man, and he shot him over a tweet, and 4 times. And there was an investigation, like you said, they brought in a CERT to investigate the RCMP's investigation of the constabulary, and it's just a phenomenal press conference that the RCMP give about ACERTs, being Alberta's special investigations, report on the RCMP. And he just is like, well, we're not going to answer anything about what the report says. That's going to be secret. We're not going to talk about it. It's now a closed investigation. ACERT has done the investigation, so trust us. The results are what we're telling you right now. And a reporter keeps repeatedly asking, well, how, if we don't see the report, are we supposed to trust you? And he's like, well, because you're just supposed to.
Yeah. Like, I don't know. It just comes up to owning up to it, man. Like, well, it shouldn't happen in the first instance, because that sounds like on the face of it, what I heard was not acceptable at all. But, how long can this go on for? Like, really, how long can this be sustained, where cops come out and they say, what they want you to hear, and it's spin, and then they refuse to tender the documents? That's I don't know, and I don't know how you can simultaneously refuse to tender documents. You're a government agency, and they like to claim that, it's protected A, or whatever they say, it's classified. They have no reason often to do that. Like, it's crazy that they're allowed to do that, to refuse to tender documents about their performance. I don't know. I don't get it.
Maybe we could ask some questions in regards to some of the reports that happened around Wortman over the years, and maybe just get Josh's opinion on what he thinks on some of that.
Yeah. I like it, man.
So we know that, what was it, 2002? Correct me if I'm wrong, Adrian.
Yeah.
Yeah, you talking about his assault charge?
Yes.
Yeah, it was 2001. Ended up getting, I think he went to trial in 2002 or something like that. But yeah.
Yes.
Okay. And then we also have another occasion that came up at his business. And what year was that one, Seamus?
Well, the father wasn't too sure. He said around about 10 years ago. So I guess we're talking 2010, thereabouts.
Yeah, okay. So that's what I thought about, 2009, 2010. So we have 2 instances that we know one for sure, he had that encounter with the RCMP, potentially a second one where it would have been reported. I don't know if you're familiar with that case, Josh.
I don't know the second one. I read about the first.
So there's the threats.
Yep.
The armed robbery that took place at his dental clinic.
He was the
robbery where he pulled the shotgun. Sorry.
Right. Okay.
And nothing ever happened about that. Then there was the threats to the father, which were recommended by the uncle to report to the RCMP. All followed up on. They were very, they just would not answer. Bible Hill seems to be a problem. From what I'm reading, Bible Hill Detachment, which you were talking earlier, 26 members is how many members they have. They have off hours, apparently. It's not a 24-hour detachment. It operates on call 4 hours. Yeah. 2 till 6, which is absolutely absurd. I can't believe there's a time off for the police, but apparently, I'm sure all kinds of criminals are going to go out there. And then there was Brenda Forbes, right? Her complaint to the RCMP, which was followed up equally. So there's like 4 or 5 at least cases where the RCMP have specifically been dispatched, or the Halifax in one case. Regional police has dealt with Mr. Wortman, a conviction, and you have the very first day on the 19th, Superintendent Leather gives the press conference, and he says, no, Wortman was not known to police at all.
Yeah. So yeah, the comment on known to police, like, that doesn't surprise me, and I don't know how to take that. So generally, when we say known to police, when I worked, that means somebody usually has a CPIC entry. So they're on probation, or they have FIP hits, firearms interest police hits. And I think Wortman would have a FIP hit given it was an assault charge, but I think it was a conditional discharge. So I don't know if the FIP would remain. Generally a FIP hit.
90-day probation, I think he got, right? And then he had to fulfill the anger management classes. Yeah,
so that wouldn't be on CPIC as an entry. If you ran that name, nothing would come up. But potentially, and there probably was a FIP hit, so firearms interest police. There's other SIP hits. There's special interest police. So those are things that are not current and ongoing, but could stay on your record, not on your record, but on CPIC for police interest for a period of time or indefinitely. So those incidents should, like you'd think that some of them would end up on CPIC if they were handled properly. But if they weren't handled properly, they'd probably just be put into a records management system. So when somebody says they were known to police, that usually means that they're so ongoing and there's so much going on with this person that we know who they are, we know their picture, they're on CPIC, and like that, we knew who they were. If somebody did something decades ago and they do something now, I wouldn't refer to them as known to police. If even if they had, let's say, family troubles at their house, which never resulted in criminal charges, so nothing on CPIC, but there's just reports, I would still not even refer to that person as known to police, because that's
previously known to police. That was the way the question was phrased, verbatim.
Previously known to
Mr. Wortman previously, well, it wasn't. They didn't release the name, or did they? They said is the accused previously known to police, and his response was no, he was not.
And how long after the shooting was that press conference?
6 p.m. that night on the Sunday.
If they said that a period of time later, I'm sure they had information coming out of niche or not a records management system. That being said, as well, in 2001, they may have still been using paper. Actually, probably the RCMP were. So if those records were on paper and they had to be accessed by a clerk and located, that could be more time consuming. So if that happened and let's say I was running this from start to finish and you asked me, Josh, was that guy known to police? And this is hours later, let's say half a day later. I would first check CPIC, then check the local records management system. And given the gravity of what happened, I would say, we've had previous interactions with this individual. If somebody was a gangbanger and they're constantly in a jail, they're on 3 probation orders, and they're emails circulating about like current activity, I would say known to police. I would, for this case specifically in Nova Scotia, I would probably say we've had previous interaction with this individual and he has a dated record. Mm-hmm. So I don't know what the nomenclature is that the RCMP use, right? They may have just said no because they didn't want people to know that, but they may have also been time consuming accessing all the previous files that weren't listed on CPIC, right? CPIC's like a priority system. Like it's always updated. It's always kept current. There's clerks that put their CPIC data entry clerks, right? So that is where that's the most important thing. If you run somebody's name and it goes FIP, Firearms Interest Police, Special Interest Police, known to carry firearms, is current subject of a drug investigation, that needs to be there. But things that are on the records management system, so where you just type reports, it's a different system everywhere. CPIC is standalone. So that may be handwritten, that may have taken time to access. Maybe they were trying to determine the relevancy of those various things, so there are a lot of failure points and maybe explanations is the way I'd put that.
Okay, and just a quick follow-up.
Yep.
Sorry, Steve, I know it's got lots of good questions. If it took days for the RCMP to quote say it was likely that he did not have a PAL or an FAC.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm have my PAL. I'm aware of the fact that all runs through the RCMP. I think they're fairly aware of that. Now, if Mr. Wortman had a weapons prohibition placed on him for how long was it? 3 years? Was it 3 years?
Mm-hmm.
I think
I'm not
so.
sure.
3 to 5.
Would they not have a record? I mean, this is absurd that they cannot answer that question for days. I mean, they run that database themselves,
Mm-hmm.
and then to come back days later and say, well, it's likely he didn't have one. When he would have a weapons prohibition on his record.
Yes. And okay, so they said likely didn't have one. So checking if somebody has a firearms license. If I have your driver's license or run your name, it's going to tell me if you have a PAL.
Yep.
If I run, like your name, it comes up with CPIC. It just says PAL holder. And to access it directly for that purpose, and given everything that happened, you'd think they would do a hard check, right? Like I would say like a soft check would just be check it on the system that CPIC uses and see if it comes up. You're probably going to do a hard check given the gravity and actually go into the files and confirm that there isn't any discrepancies. That period of time later could be explained by maybe they just don't want to misspeak because there's going to be lawsuits. Like maybe they don't want to say something that is potentially they don't know for certain. He doesn't have a PAL. He shouldn't have a PAL. Maybe they're looking at the really, really deep liabilities. If it wasn't the gravity of what happened, like let's say none of that happened and you just want to see if Gabriel Wortman has a PAL, you just go onto the CPIC system, plug his name in, and if nothing comes up, then he doesn't have a PAL. But let's say he has a gun. Well, you may call the CFO and say, can you do a hard check and see if he has a license? Given what occurred with this,
by the way?
Sorry?
Who runs the CFO, by the way?
The RCMP.
Okay.
Now,
Just
but again, it's the same. The RCMP that are out there dealing with the Nova Scotia matter, they're really just street cops. The CFO are office people and, they're going to have managers. There's local CFO offices. I think mine is in Waterloo and that's an hour away. So it's the same overhead structure and that may ease data and communication. But realistically, it's the guys on the front line or that superintendent of Nova Scotia is going to have to call somebody else. Really, realistically, if I was in the Hamilton police, it would be just as onerous to call the CFO to get a hard check done on that as somebody in Nova Scotia would be.
Okay, a soft hit, you speak of a soft hit. So hypothetical situation, you're doing a check on an individual. They previously had a 3-year weapons prohibition registered against them.
Mm-hmm.
Does that not appear in your records? When you check for a weapons?
There's different levels of checks, even on CPIC. So if that happened so long ago, and let's say you got a pardon, that's not going to show up on CPIC.
You didn't have a pardon.
Well, it may still not show up on CPIC because CPIC's going to show you when he's on suspended sentence, or it should, assuming the clerk put it on CPIC. It's going to say he has a suspended sentence. Because it was an assault charge, you'd think there would be a firearms interest police hit, so FIP hit. That just means check your local records management system. So a FIP hit will say which police service put it on. Because a FIP hit may not be resulting from charges, and it may be something that has expired on CPIC. It's just saying there has been an incidence of violence or something to be concerned about with violence. Mm-hmm. Check their local record management system for further details. That's what FIP is. So I would expect there to be a FIP hit, but they may not have put FIP on. Maybe they didn't do that 20 years ago. Maybe it wasn't as encouraged. And it may not, if he may not need a pardon, depending on how the suspended sentence goes, they may purge it after a time. I don't know specifically, but you have to do a secondary check. It's called on, I think, CR2. It's a different system where nothing is purged. Every entry that's ever been on, it comes down chronologically. So all of those things should show up on that. And again, the PAL should show up in CPIC. So when I say soft check and hard check, when I arrest somebody and I say, okay, CPIC says you're bound by probation, I don't actually know that until I call probation and they're on there 24/7 and say, can you please send me the probation order? Because CPIC could be outdated. It could be, so you have to do a hard check, get the document that is referring to, confirm it. So if it's a recognizance, you have to call that service and get the actual hard recognizance to verify that it's actually in effect. Mm-hmm. So it's not a technical term. Soft, it just means like a cursory, and what shows up, shows up. Anything that you go with that, you do like a hard check. So you actually call the source of the data and get it sent over.
So one would assume, given the magnitude and severity of this case, being Canada's worst mass murder, and the resources that the RCMP have, and the fact that they run that system, you'd assume that they would know that information fairly quickly, and that they would be diligent in checking that right away. It doesn't take days to answer likely.
Well, you're right. And that's, again, I see that, without knowing everything about it, that's that risk management, right? Like they probably are anticipating a lawsuit, and they're probably avoiding saying with any certainty, because let's say that something that's vetted is that he had, maybe he reconstituted a PAL. Maybe he put his photo on somebody else's PAL. Maybe he did have a fraudulent PAL. They don't want to say that because, and maybe they're saying, well, it's not likely he had a valid PAL, but maybe again, you're right. There's probably no good reason that they'd say likely, except for risk management and in the off chance that there was some kind of fraudulent activity happening, potentially. But I have no good answer for
the
that.
Risk management, everything seems to be pie plate, very pie plate throughout all this. Anyway.
Yeah.
I have to jump off here in a minute because I have to be up early, but I did want to ask you one question before I go. I was curious, when you ended up leaving the Hamilton Police Force, did you have to turn in your uniform? Because as I understand it, you have to hand in your uniform before you go. And you certainly can't buy one online. And the RCMP are saying that Wortman had an official RCMP uniform. So I was just wondering if you knew how he managed to get his hands on that.
Yeah, when I left, I mailed my uniform in the box. And I sent the chief an email and said I'm done, and then I was done. So I mailed my stuff, and so I can't say like when you reach retirement age, like you give all your stuff back and pants and shirt inclusive. Now you're issued multiple amounts throughout your career. I wore pants down all the time just from sitting in the cruiser and running and walking. The knees get worn out. But so is it feasible that when I started my career, I was given 3 pants? I kept one at home. I came back in and said, this one's now, and then, somehow you end up with the right amount at the end of your career. People leave pants and shirts and all kinds of stuff laying around the locker room. That's not, you have to have your gun in your locker, but people leave shirts out. So could you just nix things? We heard about stuff getting picked up and stolen in the locker room. So there's a lot of reasons, but you would make the logical assumption that all would be turned in, especially for security concerns. But what I will say as well is the RCMP said it was an official uniform. Police uniforms can be bought at any supplier, right? You put the patches on. They actually sew the patches on. So police uniforms inherently aren't proprietary. There's not a special uniform. They just come out as your standard blue. The piping is either yellow for the RCMP, black for supervisors, municipally, and red for constables. So the piping is variable. The pants are standard, and the patch on the arm, those patches go out everywhere, right? There's like trading clubs for those patches. So even if it sounds like they said official, so I'm assuming it came from an RCMP source with that language. But even without that, you grab a couple patches with the Hamilton Police, you go down to a surplus store that supplies uniforms. Those are the same uniform security guards would wear, and they'd put a security guard company on your shirt. So if you got them sewed on and it looks valid, I don't know what legitimacy level they'd assign to that in terms of how they explain it.
They said it was official uniforms, and they subsequently come out, official uniforms plural. Yeah. They subsequently come out and said that now there also is a Halifax Regional Police uniform.
Yeah. So when they say that, I'm hearing it's not like they're saying it was uniforms that have our patches on them. Mm-hmm. That language indicates that it is an official uniform. which is weird because official uniforms are merely, the pants and the shirt don't go a long way without the body armor that says police and the gun, So yeah, like I'm led to believe through that language that they were sourced from the police with the patches on them. That's what it sounds like.
Okay.
Adrian, did you want to ask that one last question about the what was it? The one that you sent me about.
Which one was that again? Slipping my mind right now.
Grab a quick coffee.
It's a little farther up in our text.
Yeah, I'm looking right now.
Oh yeah. So yeah, one thing that we did here is that after Heidi Stevenson was killed by Wortman, there were a number of police officers that were wearing red to, sort of honor her and for her life and her service and everything.
Right.
But what was coming out was that apparently that even though she was also not just an RCMP member, but a member of the Halifax police force, that the Halifax chief of police was not allowing his officers to wear the red in honor of her. So we were curious if maybe what that would be about, or if there was, I don't know, if maybe you heard something down the grapevine about something going on there.
So what I'm hearing is that the RCMP modified their uniform slightly in honor of the constable who perished, and the Halifax police wanted to do the same, but the chief of police prevented them from doing that?
Yeah, that's what I ended up hearing.
Yeah, wearing red. I think they were wearing red ball caps all over the country and stuff like that. And Kinsella, the chief there, said no.
Yeah, Dan Kinsella was the deputy chief of the Hamilton Police. I have zero respect for that individual. He's come up on Hamilton Cop Watch how many times? I don't even know. That guy, I don't know what constitutes him as a chief. I don't know how Halifax failed so badly in hiring such a inept person. Dan Kinsella, I heard, now I was gone when Dan Kinsella got hired in Halifax, but I was told by a very reputable source, this isn't like just make stuff up, a cop in Hamilton sent Halifax a thank you card. Thank you for getting rid of him, so he can't be our chief.
Wow. Wow.
And not only myself, everybody hated Dan Kinsella. So I don't know how you take that and, I say he fled out to Nova Scotia. That it doesn't surprise me to hear that, it's just, the guy was a failure. He was a failure. And I've had Halifax cops reach out to me and explain to me what's going on there today. That's brutal.
Well, I got to run, gentlemen. Thank you very much for coming
Adrian.
on, Josh. It's been great to have this conversation with you. I learned a lot.
Thanks, brother.
Thanks for coming on, Adrian.
Good night.
Thanks, Adrian.
Have a great night, everyone.
Sorry, I didn't realize he had to go. I would have shut
that's
the
okay.
pie hole.
What's been going on?
Just a little bit more follow up on that. So, because there seems to be, in my read of it, and you can answer that. I don't know, because you said you haven't had a lot of experience with interaction with the RCMP in Hamilton. Is that correct?
No. If ever, the RCMP really just doesn't. They're not around Hamilton much.
Are you familiar with animosity between police departments such as the RCMP and regional municipal police forces, such as Halifax? Does that exist?
It could, yeah, absolutely. It could exist. Now, I'd be curious about that with Dan Kinsella being a new chief and him denying that directive. I don't know why that would occur.
Well, there seems to be something going on, just more than just that. It is orders that were issued to by the RCMP to Halifax Regional Police, to Truro Police, to etc., to not become involved at all.
Okay.
RCMP wanted to run the show, and again, I would say that was totally in-house. They brought in officers from New Brunswick, say, but they would turn down Truro. And police departments that were 30 kilometers away, they would say, no, you can't be involved, but we will bring in police members from our own police force from 330 kilometers away.
Yeah,
it will bring them in. So it kept it all in house. And to Halifax, they said, you don't come outside of your area. even though Enfield, the end destination of Mr. Boardman's escapade, was in Halifax Regional, and they had do not shoot orders specifically issued to them by the RCMP.
Now, I thought I had heard that Dan Kinsella prevented their SWAT team, the Halifax SWAT team, from leaving Halifax city boundaries to assist.
They were ordered not to.
By Dan Kinsella or by RCMP?
By RCMP.
So yeah, that I had not heard. So if the animosity is downwards to the RCMP, maybe there's something going on. Maybe Dan Kinsella is being blamed for that, and he doesn't like that the RCMP ordered it, and maybe they're not talking about it. I don't know. But to your point about animosity between police services, yes, that happens. It happens a lot, especially if one police service gives another person a ticket and they flash their badge, or they start an investigation into the police. It happens even internally. There was a period of time in Hamilton where vice and drugs and guns and gangs were flipping each other's informants and trying to rat on each other and trying to one up the other team. And there was criminal corruption happening at the same time for both of them. And they had to break up all the units. They sent everybody away because it became so corrupt and festered. And then you go up the level, like, yeah, absolutely. You know, oh, some Halifax cop gave some guy in Hamilton 2 Division a ticket. Give him fucking tickets every time you can. So absolutely, it happens. It could be happening in Halifax as well.
It seemed like almost bad blood that's been going on for a while between different forces. And the article that I was reading tonight was talking about the contracts and the contract value, and I just came across the fact that the RCMP actually, which leads me to sorry Steve, I'm sure you got tons. Just tell me to shut up.
No, I don't have tons.
Unions. Now, the RCMP recently became unionized. What is your opinion of police and unions?
Well, my opinion of unions is, after being in one, is not very good. And hearing from other unions, especially public sector unions, it seems to be a problem among unions in general. But yeah, the police union is useless, because as management will decide who gets charged when, the unions then decide who gets protected when, or who gets coverage when. So like I said, those 15 females went to the union first, and the union said, piss off. Well, then they had to go through all the hoops, every judicial or every oversight body before they could lay a lawsuit, and the lawsuit almost got denied. So the unions selectively help people. Now, the union and the RCMP probably has a vested interest in maintaining relevancy of the RCMP, because the bigger the union, the bigger the prize. Mm-hmm. So, you know, you don't want to be losing those contracts. Mm-hmm. Because does Truro just want to expand their municipal service outwards into
They did get contacted because the Colchester County's contract is up, has been up for a while. In fact, it was up in March, I believe. Yep. And they haven't the RCMP still has not come back to the table and said, listen, let's deal with the contract. However, they're anticipating $2 million raise in the contract. And Truro, prior to this, had been contacted and said, listen, we'll give you 24/7. We'll give you more detachments. We'll give you all this and that in Colchester for less money than the $6 million which you were getting charged originally. Mm-hmm. And you know, I think a lot of this, that's probably a lot of the pie plating that's going on, even though I think there's other things going on, but it is somewhat to do with the contracts, because they're going to lose, if they lose public face, if they lose reputation, other municipalities will just suddenly come in and say, listen, you know what, we can do better. We can do our own thing. We don't need you. So the RCMP are afraid of that coming out, not just a liability thing, which they're majorly liable at this point in time.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, you know, police services, even individual officers, you know, like there's this holding on to something attitude. Like I would get criminal information and I would tell everybody, not like people, but like all the people I work with, hey, there's a crack house there, and at this time on these days, the dealer's there, and keep an eye out. But, It's actually a surprising number of cops that love to hold on to information so they can get the bust or they can get the arrest. So I've always said things scale up. So if that attitude, like I didn't get it, and I'm of the opinion that whether Halton does something or Niagara, if you help the community, that's the goal. But there's a lot of that self-interested policing. And I'm sure like once you get into the union, that's all it is. The union is playing a popularity contest to get in. Then they're playing a popularity contest and a power contest to stay in. They protect the right people to save face. It's the exact same thing. You go up, I've heard the same thing with your OPP. They'll have a detachment. They'll come in at, let's say, 1 million, render service. Then all of a sudden they'll go triple it to 3 when inflation doesn't explain that. So that's what I've heard. So I'm sure there is massive considerations because if one falls, how many more will fall? Yeah. And right now I'm sure that the RCMP are not appreciated in Nova Scotia. So cities may be feeling actual pressure as well to restructure those contracts at presumably a lower rate, because I imagine the economies of scale are much better for a centralized hub to expand outwards than to one nationwide body to expand in and out or throughout, sporadic. So it's, I think you're right to say that there's contract considerations and money considerations. There always is. That's how these people think. That's my big contention. They don't think about the public.
Here's another thing in saying what you're talking about right now. I've noticed, because I've been reaching out to a lot of people from around Nova Scotia that are involved with this, and I found I'm getting multiple different types of replies. I'm finding a lot of people do kind of question RCMP and how they've handled this. A lot of people are kind of thinking that they definitely mishandled this. But I'm also getting a different reply, which is silence and kind of just back off and the door is closed sort of thing. And some of those people also seem to be afraid of speaking. So is there a potential that maybe RCMP puts that scare into people that they're afraid to even speak?
Potentially. It goes back to that SIU example. Hey, what do you think? Do you actually say something? Right? It might be beneficial to say something, but if somebody hears about it, you may have an issue. I don't see, John and Joe Public or Jane Public out in Nova Scotia who lives on a country road because, maybe they go on TV or maybe they tell somebody. I don't see somebody getting harassed for that. But if you have a massive social influence and you continually repeatedly talk about the RCMP, you might, I think you'd have more of a tangible concern about them trying to not have you continue to speak about them.
Do you want to elaborate any more on that, Steve?
Well, there is a few people that have been involved with the story that have pretty much replied that, no comment. But there's been other people that, have answered the phone calls, have answered questions, and have told me things. Oh yeah, I don't never known the guy at all. Didn't really know him at all. I mean, yeah, he worked for me, but I had 50 people that worked for me. I barely knew the guy at all. Yet in different news reports, this guy was gone on record saying that he's friends with the person, friends with Wortman, and they had a relationship. Yet when I call the guy, it's complete 180 of that.
A lot of silence.
There's a lot of silence from people. But the few people that I have talked to on phone have mentioned that there is a big mishandling with the RCMP. Even if we're very silent, they mention that.
I don't know anybody in Nova Scotia, and I don't talk to anybody, so I can't even get a read on anybody. I imagine they're still traumatized, right? Because I think a lot of people will end up saying that could have been me. If you went down this road, if you went down that road, obviously it's a very traumatic experience for the whole province, likely, right? So I don't, people may be expected to not want to talk about it for that reason. But if you're intuitively feeling that, they have fear about retribution, and especially the proximity to the call, if they're involved or they have direct knowledge, they may not want to tell you because they don't want to getting back that they leaked it, or maybe they do have fear of retribution. Maybe they know what occurred. I've read comments people saying, I'm an RCMP, whatever, and keep digging, keep getting those FOIs in because this is big. You read on Twitter the random comments saying, keep pushing. They're hiding something huge.
Mm-hmm.
But to what tenacity do I give those comments? Like, I don't know if I can
speculate onto that.
Sorry?
Do you want to just speculate as to what they're referring to? These ex-RCMP officers who are referring to something big in the background?
Well, that's the issue, though. Who are these comments from? I always have to question.
Veterans.
Sorry?
33-year veterans, commanders.
No, but is that so? Do you know who these people are?
Yes.
Okay.
I was just reading an article tonight on a live stream.
Okay.
Two members in the Colchester Police Advisory Board.
Okay.
One of them who is ex-RCMP, 33 and a half years of experience, and he was a commander of a detachment. And
he said, keep digging because there's more, and this is a bigger story, and there's another story?
No, he said they're a threat to the public.
The RCMP?
Yeah, they're not doing their job.
Oh, well, I mean, that much is obvious, I think. I haven't seen that one yet. I was more referring to, on Facebook or on Twitter or on Reddit, somebody goes, oh, here's a screenshot of a conversation between somebody who's in the RCMP. So that kind of stuff. There was one of that nature that said, keep digging, keep getting FOIs. You're going to blow the lid off this, but don't let it up. It's something huge. But that's just a screenshot of a conversation. So, I mean, I can't speculate on what that means. I can, I don't think it's too hard to see, like this Gloucester Police Service Board guy, that they fucked up, right? I think I can see that from halfway across the country. I don't know if there's more to what he wants to say, right? I think if people have it, just say it. But I understand the predicament that, they want to lay the groundwork maybe to get people to get the information. It's just, I want to see a robust investigation with that whole thing is all I know. That's not what I want.
Do you think that a public inquiry would provide that?
There has to be a public inquiry. Like it won't necessarily provide it because you're still relying on people tendering information. And that's a failure point. So it might not get to the absolute bottom, but there has to be a public inquiry.
Oh, yes. But see, the way that I'm looking at it, I think that people that are involved should launch a class action suit against the RCMP and and depose people in discovery.
They should.
And they should answering them the questions, because I don't think, frankly, in a public inquiry, to what I've been reading, you get a lot of answers, specifically to do with the RCMP. They're very evasive. Mm-hmm. They don't want to deal with things. They don't want to talk about things. I mean, the Journalists Association gave them the award for most secretive organization, law enforcement organization in Canada, is the RCMP. And it's constantly secret with these people.
Yep.
The quote here is from our retired RCMP member. This is from the Halifax Examiner. Quote, "I've read everything you've written over the years, and while I agree with some of it, a lot of it made me mad," said one former high-ranking RCMP executive. And not named, but of course these people don't want to go on record, a lot of them. But, quote, "But now I have to admit, I agree with you. The RCMP is broken. It's not ready. It's a danger to the public and its own members."
Yeah. Well, that's clear, but I can easily say the same thing about the Hamilton police to a certain extent.
So, and that's what I'm kind of, I think that's where most of us are coming from over here, is that something needs to be overhauled in general. I think this view, I liked the fact when I was watching you speak about the fact that you put on a uniform does not equate to the fact automatically you're a hero.
Yeah.
Like that's
100%.
Yeah.
And heroic acts are done by people that wear uniforms or not. It doesn't matter. It's all your actions, right?
Yep.
But it is this this business about somehow the public no longer is honored, whether it be by politicians or police forces or whatever, who is directly employing these people, whether it be the police or the politicians. They are no longer responsible. I noticed that here in Calgary. They changed even the badging system on the car, which said something to me. I think now it says courage, vigilance, and something to do with being brave. And I was like, that has nothing to do with the public. Those badges all to do with, who am I as a police officer? I'm powerful. I'm strong. Look at me. You know, it's nothing to do with, I'm going to serve and protect you.
Well, fuck. The Hamilton Police's catchphrase is to be the best, most progressive police service.
Progressive?
Are you serious?
Yeah, it says progressive. Like, I don't know, everything that I've talked about on Cop Watch and everything that I've seen that I have yet to talk about, there is nothing progressive. It's regressive. And so these fucking catchphrases and all this shit they put on their cars to serve and protect. Are you actually going to do that? Are you actually going to charge the cop that kicks somebody in the face? If not, then that's just meaningless. Right? And I would say take it off, but I know they won't, because they think it's an investment in getting out of it when it happens.
Do you take some stock in the fact that there is more of a police state that is developing?
Yeah, like I think that, you know, and I actually saw some pushback from the city I was working in, and actually the whole province of Ontario. Cities now are starting to look at private security companies with more viability in terms of contact security, like point of contact security. So they're in a library or a mall, and the unions, the police unions, are fighting tooth and nail. They're saying, no, you can't have private companies do this. They don't have the same level of accountability, somehow inferring that the Police Service Act has had them be accountable at all ever. And in fact, the very nature that it's a competitive industry in the security industry. If one company screws up, fire the company and hire another company. So the fact that there's competition, it means it's accountable. But the police, even unions, are saying, oh, no, it's us. We're the only ones that can do that. So that's for money. I think, the hero thing is just like, come off it, man. Go to work and just help people. Who cares? And if you get in a gunfight and you run towards the gunfire, cool, I'll call you a hero in a minute, right? Mm-hmm. But if you cower and drive away, like that happened in Hamilton. A guy got charged because there was a guy running around with a knife, and he drove the other way. Mm-hmm. So you're not a hero. And the cops that, everything they talk about, not heroes. Dan Kinsella, maybe one time in his career, he said he was on the SWAT team before. Maybe was he? Maybe he got in a gunfight. Maybe saved somebody's life. I don't know, right? But the way he's operating now, nothing heroic about it. Mistreating people isn't heroic. It's, you don't just get to save face because you used to do good work. I think if you seek promotion, you should keep doing good work. And that's a big part of the problem. I think at the front end, at the lower end, there is a lot of humble cops, and they don't ride that shit. But as you start going up, they rely on it more. And then they try to propagate it. They say, oh, mental health matters. Well, when you were a constable, you made fun of people with mental health issues, but then you become management in order to save face. It's like, I really care about mental health. Mm-hmm. The staff sergeant that fucked me over actually was a year later the leader of the mental health committee, using my mental health for my opinion. She didn't like me. But that's what's occurring, right? You go up higher and higher, and they create these platitudes and these contrivances because they're fucked up. Management, they shouldn't be seeking promotion. So they go higher and higher, and the more you guys hear in the public is management, right? Because again, constables can't talk to people, so it's management's contrivances that they're conveying. Oh, we're heroes in life. They're coming up with these hashtags and saying all these catchphrases. They'll say other things like stakeholders, right? We consult, consultation,
buzzword,
stakeholder, all these fucking buzzwords. But then I go back to, what does politics look like? Do we have intellectuals coming up and having conversations, or do we have this? Right? That's what people are eating up. They're eating up all these platitudes, and paying attention is hard work, right? Like I can tell you have been paying acute attention. And I'm sure it's like mentally taxing and keeping all this going. People just want this shit. And they just want the police to come out and say, you're stakeholders and we love collaboration, safety, heroes in life. And people go, it feels good, right? And they turn on the news and it's like cognitive dissonance. But the police said they were nice. Well, they just kneeled somebody's neck to death. Well, I don't know, right? I think that one's so egregious. Nobody's defending the police on that.
Yeah.
But, a lot of these things happen and they're like, well, it can't be true. I don't know. The OPP association head is buying private villa in the Caribbean. Oh, must be, whatever. The fuck? No, right? That's nuts. I hope that answers the question. I kind of went on a tangent there.
What about, so do you think that would make a difference if civilians started filing suits against police departments and started to balance that out, because when in the real world, right, people work, there's a certain amount of respect and, to use that word, fear of your boss, right? You have to perform, otherwise you're going to lose your job. That seems to have gone by the wayside a long time ago, involving police departments or politicians or whatever. So if civilians individually started filing suits against people, yes, they cost money, yes, they take time, etc. But if that started to get into these power structures, whether it be government or police or whatever, listen, civilian might sit here and actually file suit. They might actually do a lot of investigating. They might get a lot of people, because like in our case, right, I think there's 40 people now investigating. And I know I've been doing it, whatever, and Steve and Adrian and Kage, a few people have been investigating basically all day, every day since this started, and have learned a lot of stuff, and compiling data now to bring forward. I think that's kind of the vision, to bring forward enough evidence to file suit. And if these suits were filed, do you think that might instill that respect and fear back into these organizations, so that they learn, listen, who do I really work for here? Should I think about things, what I'm doing here?
So, brief answer, no, they won't change.
No?
Here's why. Most cops are held non-indemnifiable in suits. So they have contracts that say when the cops mess up, they're not, unless it's criminal, they're not held civilly liable. So when you file suit, you're expecting this cascade. It's received. Somebody has to pay for this, right? So it's received. It's against, let's say, the Nova Scotia, specifically RCMP and the RCMP actual. And the lawsuit is for X number of millions of dollars. Who pays for that?
Oh, we do. Yeah, it's us at the end of the day, but it's still, and I understand that. I do understand that. It's going to be us that's all paying. So, we're suing ourselves, essentially.
Oh, no, I don't mean that. Like yes, that is what's occurring, but that's not the factor I'm considering when I say that. It's like, unless you start actually suing police pensions, that's when things will change. Right? Like
that's a very good point.
They won't change because they have no direct implications. I mean, yes, it's a headache. They're going to be on the news. People are going to be tweeting really fucking angry things saying resign in all caps, right? And they're not going to resign. They're going to ride out till their pension. But they know that they fucking ride it out and they'll get their pension. Dan Kinsella, he's going to go out to Halifax, stuff that baby nice and fat, and then it's going to, he's going to ride it out. Does he actually want to be the chief, or does he want to increase his best five? Start denting the pensions, go after them personally, civilly, but that's the problem. You can't, because they're in contracts that say they won't be held accountable directly.
We're accumulating data where, I'm hoping that we'll keep uncovering more and more is coming out, where we can possibly get civil suits. And what is it I used to advocate for? I can't remember the criminal code section, where a private citizen can lay charges against anybody in this country They present their evidence before a magistrate in the applicable region, and they can actually lay charges, criminal charges, against another individual, regardless of who they are, as long as they have sufficient evidence that the judge deems appropriate. They will file a charge, and you bypass police services, you bypass the Crown, you go straight to a judge, and you say, this is what I've got, and this is who I'm going after, and they have to weigh the preponderance of evidence and then decide whether a criminal charge can be laid. But a private charge can be laid by a citizen. Are you familiar with that?
So yes, and I actually did that against none other than Dan Kinsella.
Ah,
That's awesome.
Isn't that fucked up after that whole conversation? So when I left policing, I left under a mental health issue, and my firearms license was revoked during that time. And I didn't want to start shit with who I knew was, a very problematic police service during that time, because I had court proceedings. I sorted those court proceedings out in June 2018. So I got my guns back, and then I started training again, and I strapped the GoPro on, and I was doing cool videos. And then I think it was in about, when was it? October. I think it was in October, September. I wrote a blog post on my website, and it's now up on Cop Watch, and I explained the whole thing. But I wrote a blog post talking about what happened to me and why I left in its entirety, because, information trickles. And a lot of people messaged me that worked directly with me and have heard the story, and they're like, wow, I didn't know all those details, because it's hard to explain things that are that convoluted. So I just wrote it all out as it was a general report, and I put it on my website. And little did I know that Dan Kinsella started a criminal investigation against me. When was that? November? I think it was like November, early November. And he was told by major crime, including homicide detectives, that there was nothing that I was doing that was cause for concern, either mentally or criminally. There was no criminal intent. So Dan Kinsella, with that information, then directed the now deputy chief, Ryan Diodati, to send people to my house. So I read I know this because I read their notes, and Dan Kinsella failed to write notes about that. So Ryan Diodati's notes say, Dan Kinsella told me to send guys to Josh's house. Dan Kinsella didn't even make those fucking notes. So that tells me that there was intent. You had no reason to come to my house personally. Really, you had no reason to direct people to do a criminal investigation when you yourself are a police officer. You read what I wrote. Well, how can you not deduce that it's not criminal? So, and he failed to make notes indicating intent right there. So on December 28th, I think a homicide detective and another sergeant showed up at my front door. I posted that on YouTube because I recorded my front door thinking maybe, they might try something like this. Well, they fucking did. And so I actually tried to file a complaint through the OIPRD. I don't think the time frame was too long, and they weren't responding and things like this. And so I said, you know what? I need immediate action taken on this. They can't keep coming to my house. I emailed the other deputy chief, Frank Bergen, and they haven't come. And I think that's why. I think because I contacted the other guy, the outsider, said, what the hell is going on here? And that's the other thing too. Why was Kinsella investigating me when there was another deputy chief who was impartial? I named Dan Kinsella in my complaint. So sorry if I'm spinning here. So anyways, I went to the courthouse, I think on about January 4th. And I did what you're saying. I brought in a private information. I wrote out all my evidence in a synopsis, as I know with an appendix and all these things, all my evidence. And I sat down with the justice of the peace in a small room. I said, Your Worship, here's my evidence. And she reads through it, and she goes, okay, can you go sit outside? And well, I explained what I'm doing. I'm trying to lay in information against the deputy chief of the Hamilton Police for criminal harassment. Mm-hmm. Now the section was 264. So section 264(1), either D or C, which is harassing somebody for the intent of, I can't remember the exact wording, but there are 4 sections basically. This was the most pertinent and it makes sense. Mm-hmm. And she goes, okay, go sit outside. She then calls in a police officer to stand in the room. And I heard her through the door. She goes, oh, officer, can you just come in case I say something that he doesn't want to hear? And I'm going, what the fuck? So that's how the magistrate treated me. I'm going, are you fucking kidding? I can hear this through the door. What other information have you fucking leaked, you moron? So I go back in and I say, Your Worship, why is the officer here? She goes, oh, I just brought him in because he can answer questions about the OIPRD. And I go, Your Worship, I heard you through the door say it's in case you say something I don't want to hear. You got to get your door fixed. And she gets all flustered. Oh, okay. So the officer's standing there trying to explain to me the OIPRD as though I'm not a fucking recently retired police officer. So I think because of the initial fuck up and that they had no sound security, that she approves it. So she approves the charge. And I had to come back, I think a month later or a week later, 2 weeks, I can't remember. And I go to court, and now there's a new justice of the peace. So they're actually having like bail hearings during this time. They bring me up, I give, they have my evidence, and I explain it. This is why this is criminal harassment. Even though it only happened once, it was so grievous that it fell within the wording of the criminal code. And she goes, no. Under 2641C, which is different wording, I didn't lay the information on that charge, but I didn't have a criminal code in front of me to correct it. She goes, I'm just not going. We're not proceeding with this. It's not happening. And I went, well, there's my fucking answer about any level of accountability with private information. So I know that's a long story, but I do know what it is. And it didn't work out well for me against Dan Kinsella, of all people.
Wow. That's awesome.
If people started to think with that mentality, this business about being so apathetic, people can tweet, people can bitch and moan, complain, make a Facebook post, I don't know, put a picture behind their avatar or whatever.
Yeah.
But they're not willing to do the action to clean it up themselves. This is a problem.
Yeah. Yeah, there is very little. And actually, I forgot to mention on your topic, criminals are going to be hard because, again, you have to get a justice of the peace to approve it. And they might be looking at that juicy pension money too. And they don't want to start any shit with the RCMP, so they just say, fuck it. But what I would look at with the RCMP is look at their contracts in those cities. Look what the contracts say. Look what the service delivery expectation is. Because if they're going to start concealing things and there's wording in their contract that is a service delivery expectation, and you file a lawsuit, you can say, yeah, you know what? They're not held non-indemnifiable because they weren't in compliance with the contract expectations that the city provided. So they're actually going to stand civilly individually, and then you're going to get the fucking truth come out.
Yeah. And that's what I'm advocating, negligence. Yeah. They're negligent, grossly negligent in the deaths of, at the very least, 9 individuals, if not more.
Yeah. And depending on the how good those claims are about reporting information to the RCMP beforehand, they may be in a not an abstract sense, fully responsible.
Yes. No, and I totally agree. Agree. I mean, at the very least, it's 9, and you could go as high as 22. And I think it's not a stretch, given the amount of stuff that we're uncovering. I don't know what Steve's feel of that is. What do you think, Steve?
No, I agree. I was thinking maybe we could show him the Shubakanati video. And then if there's any questions that we had about the Stevenson situation, and if we thought it was if he thinks it's maybe a pit maneuver, questions like that.
Well, yeah, I couldn't answer anything like that. I actually watched the video of that incident, and I would like to know, for the purpose of, effectiveness. So I'll just answer that right now. I want to know what happened there. Did she ram him? Did he ram her? That's the thing, because I want to know. That's a big part of it. Why did she decide to engage? Right? Was it a tactically sound idea to engage at the time, or was the engagement pushed by Wortman? That's something that I'm curious about, because we all make the assumption that she rammed him. I don't know. How do we know that's what happened? Right?
I see. I'm going to go put on a little bit of tinfoil hat, but I've done the timing on stuff here and the routes, and people have gone out and driven them down there for us. And worked out the timeline, the quote official RCMP timeline. Time doesn't work in their favor to say that this happened at all. all the events that they say occurred, being some sort of an accident. It's evolved from, first it may have been kind of a pit maneuver, to then it was a head-on collision, to now it's some sort of an accident. Wording has always changed on that, but you have, so from the cigar hut at 10:25, even though the time on the timestamp on the video indicates 10:55, on an IP connected camera, which auto sets the time, whatever, fine. If you want to say it's 10:25, okay, let's go with it, RCMP. 10:25, from there to Enfield is a 43-minute drive if you drive the exact route that he drove. And he dies at 11:26, they say. So he in that time frame, so that's what are we talking about? 25, an hour, roughly an hour and 1 minute. 43 minutes minus that is what do you get? 18 minutes, right? 18 minutes. In 18 minutes, he has to accomplish the following things. Not accomplish, that's a very poor word, but he does the following things. He has the accident with Stevenson. He shoots her. He shoots his own car or lights it on fire, whatever way. He takes out a bag of weapons. He then flags down a motorist. He kills that motorist. He then takes the body of that motorist, puts it in the back of one of the police cruisers, lights that car on fire. He then goes to Gina Goulet's house. He then shoots two of her dogs, kills her, finds the keys to her car somewhere in her house, takes her car, changes his clothes in 18 minutes. No.
Wasn't Morrison in there as well?
Oh yes, and has a shooting of Morrison south of Shubenacadie, to which he also has to drive then north. So I haven't even mapped out that part yet. It's totally unbelievable. And then you get the last picture, picture that they provided of their multitude of great timeline garbage, which is from their own official. They run the weigh scales in Nova Scotia, so it's from their camera. They say that their camera's off by 52 minutes. I don't know a weigh scale that would be off by 52 minutes, because people's logbooks have to be verified by camera footage on self-weighs, but whatever, RCMP run it. And that camera, again, is also off by 52 minutes. So the two cameras at the very end are off by an hour and some odd time. I mean, this is unbelievable.
Of course, yeah. Like, I don't know. You're telling me new things right now, right, that I haven't heard. So 18 minutes to accomplish all that. Of course, even just without driving, it seems like that would be impossible. But this is totally new to me. But I'm willing to look at that stuff. I don't know what value I can add. That seems like, you can deduce it just as well as I could, right?
Does that seem probable, to commit all of those things in 18 minutes?
Well, of course not. But I also haven't seen, I haven't seen the timestamps, and I haven't read the explanations.
Well, take the timestamps out.
Yeah,
I'm bitching and whining about the timestamps because it just seems preposterous. But
yeah,
to have two cameras, and two cameras, both of them be out when they're connected to the internet. Everything's plug and play these days. You plug in your computer, it automatically detects the time from IP. But if you remove that and you go with the official RCMP timeline, you have 18 minutes to commit all of those atrocities. Is that? Oh, and he steals her weapon.
Well, he also shoots a dog.
He shoots the dogs.
So
changes his clothes.
What is the reason why the RCMP would be fudging those numbers?
Oh, I think that might have something to do with what happened at Shubenacadie.
And that is which incident? Sorry,
that's
Stevenson.
The accident with Stevenson.
Oh, okay. So there is
Morrison.
So they're basically cropping the time down. It's being suggested to take out that incident of the timeline.
I think there may have been an accidental friendly fire incident.
and it was attributed to him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've read that, right? And people were saying that the RCMP, I watched that video again, and they say they shot him. Didn't they, in that video, the witnesses? I don't know if those witnesses have been spoken to when the cars are on fire.
Oh no, everybody's quiet on that.
I thought I heard they shot him. We're watching this live, like, oh my God, this is really happening.
Well, you get two different time frames for that one. You get one lady, Darcy Tuck, who says she witnessed the shooting, and
As is being suggested by the official story.
yes, and one car at that point in time, two cars were on fire. You also have the video where you have the tactical team there, and one car is on fire at that point in time, and that person's also saying, "Oh, they just shot that person right in front of us."
Yeah.
I think it's speculative, but the time frames don't fit.
Mm-hmm.
The people in the story are really shutting down, and Steve can definitely attest to that one because he's been really good. Like, I'm not the best at speaking to people. So he's gone and talked to a lot of these people, and they've shut down. And then you have Mr. Ellison, who is a complete wild card. I don't know if you saw his interview.
No.
Clint Ellison.
We should actually even show that to you, just so you can watch it. You can share it on here too, Seamus. I don't know if you know how to.
Okay. So
on the bottom, there's like a share screen button. You just have to make sure you click share audio too.
Host disabled participant. Oh, you don't want me sharing.
Oh, it's not allowed?
It says you've disabled.
Oh, here we go. That's my bad. Now you should be able to.
So what do you want me to play? Clint Ellison's
Yeah, it'd be a good one for you to see. Are you familiar with who Clinton Ellison was?
No, can you remind me?
Okay, so Clinton Ellison is the guy who was in Portapeak on the beach road there, and his brother was killed, Corey Ellison.
And he hid?
And he hid in the bushes from the killer for a few hours or whatever. 4 hours.
But did he? The RCMP say he was walking down the beach with him.
Yeah.
The RCMP dispute what a witness says. I love this. They do that. I've noticed that you've done this a few times. Anyway.
Yeah.
Okay.
So he went out and he made a video. He made a little, I guess, I don't know, explanation to what he had said, I guess.
Yeah. So there was only, I think only 4 or 5 people who have ever spoken publicly who have witnessed anything. And Mr. Ellison was the witness from Portapic, and CBC altered his statement. They removed a minute of this, so I have the full video before they went back and deleted 1 minute portion of the video. But watch it and see what you think. I don't know.
Can you see it?
No,
I can't see it either. I can hear it, but I can't see it.
Why is that not sharing? Okay, let me try this again. How do I do the share business? See this techno mumbo jumbo, man. You are screen sharing. Stop. New share. There we go. Is this it? Movies TV. Let's do that one. Do you see it?
No.
Nope.
Oh, God sake. Stop share.
I'm just going to grab a drink, guys.
Yeah, no worries.
Is it showing up?
Nope.
Why is this not showing?
It says you're sharing your screen, but it's just showing like a black screen.
Even if I play it?
Yeah, even when you play it, you can hear it, but
I wonder why it's not sharing.
I wonder if it's something on my end that I gotta like approve or something.
Share computer sound.
Are you picking a window? Is that why?
I tried both ways.
Oh, because like when you open it, it shows up and it shows like a bunch of windows, right? So you have to actually click a window to share.
Yeah, I did.
Oh,
I clicked. What are you seeing right now?
just it says Seamus has shared his screen, and it's
you see
black.
nothing.
Yeah. Here, let me see if I can share one of mine.
Here, I've got it listed actually.
You can put it in the chat, and I can try and do it that way too.
The what? The
In
video?
the chat here, and then yeah.
I don't know if I have the video uploaded.
Oh, okay.
The full video. Fuck me. Seriously?
Let's see if mine works.
Hey,
Did mine do anything?
I'm not seeing
That work?
anything.
What do you see?
Nothing.
Nothing.
And you can't see anything. Interesting. Maybe, you know what? Maybe it just shows up on the actual recording. That's weird.
Yeah, that
Because
might
I
be.
can see it too.
Just said started screen sharing.
Strange. Yeah, no, I chose the exact. I tried two different.
Oh, I wonder if this is it. No, that didn't do it.
It says screen one, and I'm sharing screen one, and it's like in a. Okay, or if I try this one, and you don't see anything. That's the second one I tried.
No.
Those are the only two alternatives I have.
I'll have to do it a different time. We'll see.
Yeah, that's too bad. I thought I had it. I'm pretty sure I don't have it uploaded on my channel. I did. I tried to put it up today, and they had a little bit of an issue with that. So for some reason.
Well, the video sharing won't work this time, but that's besides itself.
Let me just check my my channel and see if it's there. I'm pretty sure I don't have it up right now. No, Clint Ellison, not there. Okay. All right. Anyway, I guess what, Steve? Did you want to describe a little bit?
Well, I guess we hit quite a bit of. I guess we hit quite a bit of everything, actually.
Yeah, like I even if I see the video, man, like you're showing me new stuff here, right? I haven't done the digging that you guys have done, and I can speak to procedural things and maybe explanations, but specifically, like with 18 minutes, of course, it seems preposterous. But what does that mean, right? Like,
yeah. Here's a question I have, actually.
Yeah.
So right now in the new warrants that they released, they're talking about looking up like some of the tech that's in these vehicles that he had.
Yeah. Yep.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong here. If that tech is in those vehicles, that would potentially mean those vehicles are traceable, correct?
So tech, I'm assuming, means the onboard GPS records.
Yeah, I think that's one thing that they're asking for. They also, there was something else they were asking for as well, right, Seamus?
Oh, yeah, they've been asking for a few things, but yeah, and the cell phone was another one, which they say that he doesn't have a cell phone, but they're asking for some sort of a cell phone. I don't know if that's the girlfriend's.
It could be any cell phone.
Okay, so let's say that the vehicles do have that on, like, that navigation, that technology.
Yeah.
That's obviously something that they would be able to use to track him.
Track him actively?
Yeah.
Not necessarily, unless you're suggesting it's a police car with like a GPS chip that, or one of the roof GPS units, like OnStar. You can maybe expedite access through OnStar, but that's a very specific system. Just having onboard GPS, you would need to download that after, and the correct way to access those records would be through a search warrant.
Mm-hmm.
Even if he's dead, right? It seems that they're still writing warrants. They're not just trying to clean up the info
So what I'm getting at is, would they need to get a warrant in order to use that at 8 a.m. in the morning when they knew it was 100% Gabriel Wortman and that he was driving in a police cruiser?
So
Like, wouldn't they have been able to track him at that point, knowing that he's in a police cruiser, that he potentially has these things? Like, wouldn't that come across their mind to think, to say, hey, you know what, we're going to call the cell phone companies, we're going to call these people, we're going to call any car company that we've dealt with because we know he's in the police replica,
yeah.
and we're just going to cover all of our bases and see if we can find him in the next hour.
So if he's in a Ford vehicle that's just a mock-up, it's not going to have the hardware that shows it obviously as a blip on dispatch radar,
Okay.
of course. They know he's driving a Ford car. So I dealt with stolen cars all the time. We dealt with cars. I don't even remember a protocol to, in an expedite fashion, like contact OnStar, right? And OnStar is meant for that. OnStar has like a concierge that, you know, you can call them and say, hey, it's the police. We really need to know where that car is. And maybe that, you know, there might be some protocol that say, okay, what's your badge number? We'll tell you, right? There could be an exigent circumstance protocol, but to be able to call up and find out if it has onboard GPS and to find out actively where they are, you'd see that with a cell phone, right? If they knew a cell phone number and they knew that was the case, you don't need a search warrant to get that. You just say exigent circumstances to Rogers, let's say, or Bell or TELUS, whoever the provider is. You call them up. There's probably an exigent circumstance protocol. You say, this is a mass shooter. We need to ping his cell phone right now and find out where he is. It happens with people for mental health all the time, suicidal people. They'll ping their phone. Dispatch can actually do it now, I think. You just ping their phone number, and you obviously have to have a report attached to that so that there's some oversight. So it's not just like pinging phones all the time. But if you didn't have a cell phone, the car angle would be very problematic, I think.
What this now? This is again very obviously very speculative. But when looking at the car, they refer to the car as, quote, what did they say? Exactly like a police car, right?
Yeah. Well, Brenda Lucci or Lucky or whatever her name is said there is no possible way that she would have been able to say that that is not a police car.
Now, could it be possible? Could it just be possible that the police car, since he has some kind of an inside scoop on some of this, could it be possible that and I know that this is kind of reaching out there, but it's good to operate in every kind of realm and think of all possibilities. Could it be possible that the police car was in fact a real police car? Because looking at the police car, and I've looked into, it had a full-on cage in it, which does not seem to be an item that can be purchased in Canada. It had a rear-facing radar gun. I don't know anybody who wants to build a replica of a police car, and I don't even know where in the hell you would get that. A lot of this stuff that this car had seemed genuine, not replica, not mock-up, not something he built out of 2016. I believe they're saying it's a 2016 police interceptor, but in fact it looked 100% identical and had all the operating equipment there that a normal police car would have. Would it be possible for stores, RCMP stores, to lose a car?
Well, I mean, anything's possible, I suppose, right? I agree with the cruiser thing. I mean, I think they sourced where the decals are from. I saw the same thing when I saw the picture of the car. I thought, well, that's a big job to get it that good looking. And I thought possibly the same thing, right? Could it be an actual police car? And then but that leads to an infinite amount of questions. How did he get it? Where would it be from? Is it possible that fleet services would lose a car? Anything is possible. How and why did he have it? Were people ignoring it? I mean, this leads, you start going down that path and it starts becoming very bizarre, which I think is, fair as well, assessment of what's going on here.
Well, do you know anywhere where you can purchase a radar gun, like for the car, actually equipped for the car? Do you know anywhere, or a cage in Canada? Because I can't seem to find anywhere in Canada that you can purchase a full-on cage. I can find in the United States. I can't find in Canada. It's not like a car with a back seat and the paint is on the side and we've got a few decals. No. This has got all the equipment in it.
So is this from the picture of the car in the garage?
Absolutely. Yep. You can
And
see
is there any other pictures of this car currently?
Oh yeah, we've got a few.
Do they show the cage in its entirety?
No, but the warrant in fact indicates that there was a cage in there.
Okay. And then, so here's my question. It's not a question as a rebuttal, but it's what I would ask. What is the depth of that technology? Because if this guy really had some weird cosplay fetish, is it possible that he takes a picture of a rear-facing radar gun and somehow replicates something to be so similar that it's viewed as a radar gun?
Yeah, like that's a 3D printed sort of idea.
Not even, I don't know I didn't do radar as a cop. I'm pretty sure they look like a PVC tube potentially with some etchings on it. You know what I mean? Like if this guy had the robust drive to replicate this whole thing, if he was really, some like bent about it, he could be like, I really wanted to have that rear facing fucking radar. Is it impossible to suggest that he went to Home Depot and used like modeling clay and shit and spray painted it? So that's what I wonder, right? Same thing with the cage. If his car had an entire cage built in, like with the plastic that goes up to the roof and perfectly bevels around, and the seat in the back was plastic, that's pretty proprietary. And yeah. I think he's had links to the US. So could he have feasibly brought this stuff up? Maybe.
But again, family that live there.
But and you know what? I would imagine it's incredibly difficult to, without some kind of link saying I'm a police service, to buy that equipment. But could you make a near enough replica at a distance that it looks like it? But if you sit inside whatever he had, maybe it didn't have a separating wall. It was just on the window. So maybe they referred to it as a cage. So I imagine if they said
she got out.
Cage. Sorry?
The girlfriend.
Oh, the girlfriend.
LB got out of there. She got out through the partition in the middle, which apparently was open.
Oh shit!
So, yeah, like
how she got out. She was thrown in the back.
I didn't know that part.
Handcuffed, thrown in the back of the car, and then somehow got through the partition in the middle. So that speaks to me that it's a genuine cage, and I don't know where in the hell you're buying that.
That also speaks to me as bullshit.
Well, I mean, a genuine cage doesn't. The only way that I've ever seen somebody, it's almost impossible to get out of a conventionally built-in cage because it's very tight quarters, and for somebody to escape through the partition would be, to me, almost impossible because they'd be going through curved plastic, and the bolts are robust. The only one way that I've ever seen somebody come close is by laying back up against the internal barrier and kicking at the window to bend the door. Even the cage windows, they're all bolted into metal. But if you kick at the door enough, so I actually watched somebody bend a door outwards. So if it's a real cage on a real police car, I really highly doubt that somebody would be able to escape somehow in that fashion. It is very difficult. And so I imagine that maybe it's built to be a replica very well. You know more than I do if it's what the evidence is. I've definitely always thought that maybe it was a real car because I'm like, how could somebody?
Oh, you do?
Sorry?
You do?
No, I don't. I mean, I don't operate with that level of certainty, with that level of information. When I first saw it, is what I should say, I looked at that and I went, that's incredibly difficult to do, like without doing that all day. Mm-hmm. So, I looked at it and I saw the sticker in the window. It was a dealership sticker. So I'm going, if this was a surplus car, I actually went on myself and I searched up on the federal surplus website.
Yep.
Do they sell these cars with their stickers on? I couldn't find any. So I'm going, okay, was this a warehouse deal? Like, but then they're saying he had a replica and they found out where the stickers were made. So that kind of diffuses the notion that this was taken from somewhere or was sold with stickers on it. So again, like I can't answer these questions because I don't have enough certainty to impart any expertise on it. I think there's so much missing information packets that there could be 10, like for the first missing information packet, we could be looking at a spectrum of different options at that point. And then when that next information that's actually verifiable settles in, that could spread infinite ways, which are wholly contingent on the last set of pattern or whatever. So like, yeah, 18 minutes seems absolutely implausible. But then the question is, well, why is that? Why is that the case? Is it that the SWAT team had an interaction with Constable Stevenson? Could it have been blue on blue? Maybe. But then how many people would have to conceal that and fudge the timelines in order to make that work? That would be a lot of people, right? Because there's a lot of people involved. So, but then it's like, okay, well, if they did do that, to what end? Is it to conceal the blue on blue? These are like,
it's not actually that many if you think about it. It's not really that many. It would be the people at the event, to which there were very few, right? Because this took place at a turn. There was only one witness that I've seen that spoke, and he sped, and he's referred to in the warrants. I do have tape of him a little bit, and he said he didn't really see anything too much. He just heard shooting, what he thinks was shooting. He didn't see any actual shooting. Nobody's actually seen any shooting, which is a funny thing. Sorry?
We have Darcy who says she has.
Darcy. Yeah, Darcy's an interesting one. But you see, so nobody's really there other than the police that were there at that one SWAT team, right? Mm-hmm. The Onslow thing, like the fire hall, right, didn't come out. There wasn't the RCMP who came forward and said, "Listen, something happened." That came out via Facebook, and a neighbor who said, "What in the hell is going on? You drive up unannounced, you open up your doors, you start firing, and then you leave." As soon as the guy identifies himself as a police officer, you shit your pants and you run away. Now, how many people are you talking about there? 5 people, maybe. Well, no, obviously more than that, the RCMP member and the EMS and whatever. But you're not talking about a lot of people at the Shubenacadie turnoff. You're talking about potentially maybe Morrison, potentially dead Stevenson, the officers that were involved, to which there looks like there were 4, and that's it. That's all.
Well, I think then there's going to be forensic examination of the crime scene.
Yeah.
Do you think that they're going to want to say that there was a blue on blue incident? Realistically? I saw the OPP incident with the fire, the friendly fire. This is not something. This is not something they readily admit.
The issue with that is to conceal this for a very long period of time, like indefinitely, without it coming out. It would have to be highly compartmentalized and not too many access to the actual evidence. I don't see that happening with the gravity of there being a shooting and deaths in that area. There's going to be multiple forensic teams. There's going to be officers guarding crime scenes, various points. You're going to have to look at a very thorough suppression of all information throughout the ranks, which I know how they're gossip factories, right? I think information trickles. Is it feasible? Like, I can't say that it's not possible entirely, but that for them to come up with that level of conspiracy that quickly would be surprising.
What is it?
Another good one, maybe for you to touch on, Seamus, because you've spent a lot of time researching this, is where everything started and how he got out of that area. You've driven a cruiser around before, Josh, and
Yep.
you would know the potential capacity of what it can do on off-road. Maybe you could touch on that a little bit.
In terms of off-road for what?
Yeah, I'll let Seamus describe it for you.
Okay.
He paints a good picture.
I can't paint it exactly because I'm not there, but I assure you, if I was there, I would drive the route and figure it all out piece by piece. But what you're talking about is a phone call that occurs at 10:01 was the initial phone call to the RCMP, to 911, saying that there was a shooting incident. The RCMP maintained that in 34 minutes, because they say, well, it's very sketchy, the language that they use. They say a witness, in hindsight, believes that they saw a vehicle driving through a field at 10:35. So that's 34 minutes. They're trying to paint that the car drove out of the Portapique region through a field. Cars generally, in my experience, I have a ranch. Cars don't work very well on fields. And even if we were to believe what they're saying, because why they're saying that is because they don't want to have any culpability. They want to say, well, we got there and he just escaped because we responded by 10:26, right? And he'd already committed all these atrocities by 10:35. He's out of there. Now, this doesn't make sense. 34 minutes. We talked about the turnoff. Now we're talking about 9 people dead in 5 locations, 3 houses being burnt down, 3 vehicles being burnt, and he's tying up some of these people and burning them, so he's subduing and tying some of these people up and burning them alive in a period, and escaping in a kilometer, 5 kilometers roads, to do that all in 34 minutes. I'm like, no, there's no way you could even do probably maybe 3 murders and start one house on fire, and then drive all this huge, gigantic circuit, which is much more than 5 kilometers, in 34 minutes. But you see, what they're trying to cover up is the fact that they sat at the end of the road, in my opinion, by looking at it, and it seems to be verified by some officers who are speaking not on authority, they refer to it as, in the Halifax Examiner, who verify that. And I think that you can get that also from the statement, even from, what is his name? The new press agent, Superintendent Darren Campbell, said, we want to thank our telecommunications operators who were in contact with victims. What he's referring to is the 2 children whose mother was dead on the lawn, and they were on the phone with 911 for 2 hours, and nobody came and saved them. Nobody did anything. Right. So I think what happened was, and the articles seem to indicate, is that they were ordered to sit at the end of the road, pull back, and wait for the armored vehicle to come before they would respond. Clint Ellison seems to indicate that is at 4 a.m. So Mr. Wortman is running around rampaging, burning houses, shooting people, and these people are literally dying. And a few good officers did go in, but by the sounds of it, it was they were being insubordinate and disobeyed orders and went in anyways because they're like, people are dying. We've got to get in there and save these people. And I think this is what they're covering up, because additionally, because they don't want to admit that they were negligent in their duties of protecting these people. Because 34 minutes, you just can't do what he's saying. Like, honestly, think about lighting your house on fire. Even if you've got gas cans, he's running around with gas cans all over the road.
Yeah, again, this is new to me. I haven't had an opportunity to assess any of that, or even have access to it, right? So definitely from your assertions, like what you've discovered through these timelines, it seems like there's something going on, right? And I'm sure more information will come out, and I hope it does, with more people coming forward openly. But yeah, I literally can't speak to that. That is a very specific thing. I can maybe comment on the RCMP more generally, topically, but that is something else.
Quote, there's something they are hiding that will blow the lid right off this thing, the whistleblower reiterated. Quote, I can't tell you what that is. I shouldn't even be telling you this. Just keep pushing.
Mm-hmm.
This is to the Halifax Examiner. This is to the former editor of the Globe and Mail, not somebody who is going to write something that is unverifiable.
Mm-hmm.
And he's saying this person reached out and contacted him. And how did he refer to him as? A deep throat. And beyond that, he said, like, this, the number that appeared on my call display was something I've never seen before. That was all he said.
Mm.
I like to live in the optimistic world that, yes, we're going to hear the truth come from them. In my experience, in just other stuff that I've looked at in the past with the RCMP, they are extremely protective, silent, they redact, they deny, they don't answer anything, they obfuscate. So assuming that the RCMP investigating themselves, if we're going to get the truth, I think is really, really
reaching.
Yeah, that's living in La La Land.
Yeah, I would like to see an impartial investigation. But I mean, on it, if you saw in the news today, the nursing home situation in Ontario, the military reported it was a disaster. And what's occurring now at a provincial level? The Ministry of Long-Term Health and Care is blaming the last provincial government. They're blaming these people. It's just going to be hot potato in terms of responsibility. And that's something that, I mean, I don't even know if that's unique to the public sector or of course not the RCMP. I don't know. I can literally say nothing about that right now with any certainty. I just can't. I mean,
I'm not saying anything with certainty. All that I'm saying is these are the facts as presented. This is what the RCMP themselves.
This is their timeline.
This is their timeline. This is other people who were there at the time who spoke off the record. We have Mr. Ellison, who you have on the 20th, his statement on one of the warrants. His statement says that he's walking down the beach with his brother, Clint, and Clint gets shot blank. Why that's a secret, I don't know. Again. And then Clinton runs off in the bush. Corey gets shot. On the 22nd, 2 days later, Clinton Ellison appears on camera, says, I was at home with my dad with Corey. We saw the fires. Corey ran out and to investigate. And then I heard something. I ran out to investigate after him, found him dead on the road, and ran off into the bush because the person who shot him was chasing me with a flashlight. And I had to hide until 4 a.m., at which point the armored vehicle came in to rescue me. 2 days after that statement was made on camera by him, the RCMP again have a warrant that says Corey and Clint Ellison were on the beach. Not at home, but on the beach. 20th, 22nd, 24th. RCMP say one thing, the actual witness who was there says something entirely different. On camera.
I don't know
Talk
what to
about
say.
being on the spot.
Well, there's nothing that I can say. I mean, I think this is a decent exercise to do. I can't say anything about this because, I mean, the reality is this. I still operate on the same basis of facts and information as when I was a cop.
Yep.
I I think that's what I can speak to, the procedural implications of what is going on. But the problem is that when you take information like that, well, okay, what does that suggest then? So the police wrote in a warrant something different than what a witness says 2 days later. Did the witness
And 2 days after that, they write again. You have the 22nd, 24th.
Well, and so that is a fact. We'll say that, right? That is, from what I'm hearing, the fact. So what is a fact beyond that is the issue, right? And I can't participate in that discussion in good conscience, because is it because the witness was traumatized and he misspoke when he's in front of the camera, he's nervous? Did he misspeak to the police?
Oh,
Did
he was most certainly traumatized.
Oh, of course, yeah, of course. Did the police mishear what was said? Did the police officer who took the statement give the wrong information to the cop writing the warrant? Did the cop writing the warrant was just trying to do it very quickly and wrote the wrong thing that was actually written in a statement? You might glean through it and say, well, he said this. You're writing an entire technical warrant, and maybe that's a oversight when you're writing the warrant. Or is there something nefarious being hidden? This is why the issue with taking a finite number of facts and then making deductions about them without ancillary facts is problematic. It sounds to me like you know a lot more about this than I do. So I can't offer any specific answers, right? I think I can't answer that question. I think that I've seen so many instances and I understand how that can happen, but the why is what I simply can't say why that occurred. I can't say why on the 20th there was something said that was on the 24th, and in the middle, on the 22nd, there was something else said. The why is the most important part, and I can't answer that.
By the witness themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's, and people, this is the way it works is somebody who's taking a statement may not be the one writing the warrant. There might be several lines of communication, several lines of giving information before the warrant is typed. So something that is typed in a witness statement, if I take a witness statement from Steve and I give it to homicide in the course of a homicide investigation, and the homicide investigator, they get information. We really need to get a warrant done. There's something going on. They are going to quickly breeze through all the statements. Officer Josh got this statement off this person said this. There might be something written in a warrant that wasn't even in the statement, but in trying to expedite it to get the warrant approved, that might be typed and it might be wrong. And then that is something that will be brought up in court. Well, detective, why did you say this in the search warrant when in fact it says this? Well, you know what? I had 10 minutes to write a 20-page search warrant, and I read them as fast as I can, or somebody was narrating them to me, and I was trying to record the pertinent information. So I get it. I really do get it. I can't answer speculative questions, though. I just can't, because I operate on the same basis.
Like to people to entertain possibilities given facts. That's all. It's not anybody needs to come to a conclusion. I mean, you can't dispute basically what you've said to me is they fucked up. I mean, the best scenario is that they fucked up their investigating, their filing of warrants. That seems like a highly incompetent police force that I wouldn't want representing me or my family. Absolutely not.
Well, based on that warrant, right, I think the totality of the circumstance lends me to believe that there were several verifiable fuck-ups. Shooting at people who aren't the shooter is a fuck-up. Not sending out the emergency notification, I'd say that's a firm fuck-up.
Huge one.
And, as I said, if they didn't act on all the information that is now being reported, that's a fuck-up. But I can't get in. It's kind of a logical conundrum to say, well, in the presence of those fuck-ups, it's a monstrous fuck-up, whoever was writing the search warrant. And then...
Well, that's best case scenario for the RCMP. That is honest.
That it isn't, though. It isn't. It isn't a monstrous fuck-up to write something that is being delivered in an expedited search warrant.
Okay, well, we're talking about, like I said, 20th and 24th. So one is 2 days later. This is Canada's most massive mass shooting, they say that they have resources out the ass, which I believe that they probably did. We're not talking about 3 people. We're talking about hundreds, right? And so
they named a lot of places.
I don't know how
you
many.
had the 20th, and then you're going to go back on the 24th, which is 5 days after the event occurred. Repeat the incorrect statement again, contrary to what is videotaped by CBC from the actual witness. And that would either be one of 2 things. Either you're lying or you're fucking incompetent out the ass.
Or the witnesses.
I can't, I can't get on
Or
board
the
with
witness, yeah. Or the witness. And subsequently, Mr. Ellison has come out. But I'll tell you, watching what he says really sends a lot of red flags up, because he comes out and he makes a Facebook video starting it off by saying, "I'm so sorry to the RCMP. I didn't mean what I said." CBC had scrubbed 1 minute out of his thing where he said, the RCMP failed us. They left us sitting down there alone. The CBC removes that from a witness's statement? Unbelievable. Post-recording. I just happened to get the real copy of it beforehand. And then Mr. Ellison comes out with a video. He goes completely off the radar, dark, like gone. And like all these people do, funnily enough. And then he makes a Facebook video and he says, "I'm so sorry to the RCMP. I really didn't mean to do that. I didn't mean to talk out of turn. They were wonderful. They helped us, blah, 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 blah." Then proceeds to go on about how crazy he is, how he's on medication. Please don't come and take me to mental health services. Don't commit me. I've almost killed a woman before. He's totally discrediting himself.
Then he brings up the story of the threats from the RCMP officer.
Sorry?
Then he brings up the stories of the threats from that RCMP officer who was dating his ex-girlfriend or whatever.
Oh, yes. I think that was Truro. No, he starts raining.
Yeah, it was a different...
all over this other Truro police. He starts raining all over them and saying that they're terrible. And then concludes, once again, the conversation with, please, I'm really sorry to the RCMP. I'm absolutely crazy, basically. That's what he says. Literally. I'm absolutely crazy. And
he says he wants it to go viral.
Please make this video go viral. Share it with everybody you know. That doesn't strike me as something logical. Somebody who is crazy generally doesn't like to brag about the fact that they're crazy. They don't want the world to know that they're crazy. That sounds like somebody who is out to discredit themselves and discredit anything that they have said prior because they've been intimidated.
Well, I think there's a lot going on there. And to say at the end of all that, because that's where I can't, I think it's again, like, good job. But I think with all of those things, and I heard many things where maybe there's uncertainty, but to say, because, we already identified that he's potentially traumatized. So immediately following a traumatic event like that, maybe he is going down a bad mental path. Maybe he's acting irrationally. These things happen. But I think to say so many things occur and then it's because one thing without any supporting
possibilities, 3 possibilities. I gave the possibilities for all of them and the best case scenarios. Yeah, sure, he could be crazy. Doesn't seem very likely. I don't know if you know anybody. Would you go around and tell everybody, listen, I'm absolutely mentally ill. Don't believe anything that I say. I almost killed a woman. Please make it go viral. Please, everybody, spread that around. I want everybody to know that. Would you do that?
Well, I don't think I would do it in my current mental state, but there are certain mental health considerations which may lead to that.
Okay, so I think I've given the possibility that, yes, that's possible. That is possible. However, that seems logically unlikely. It's possible, but it seems logically unlikely. given the other two factors, which is supported by other witness statements, which is, we left them down there alone. We didn't save them. So I tend to believe what he's speaking of. I tend to believe the two kids sitting in the basement on the phone for 2 hours on 911, shitting their pants as their mother's dead on a lawn out in front. How terrifying is that for two children? Those two children are going to be traumatized for the rest of their lives. And the police didn't save them. And, you know, I completely agree that there is lots of good police officers. There are tons. But frankly, the pie plating and garbage that's going on to cover up their gross negligence is unbelievable. And people have to call them on it. It's enough is enough is enough. You know, so sue the shit out of them. And that's what I'm encouraging people to do. I'm hoping that we can get enough evidence together to just bring a suit. I know somebody who has been affected by this firsthand. So they're in. And that's a suit.
I would say that that's a good idea. In the interest of more eyes, I mean, I can't get to where you're at right now, and I can't comment on that. Maybe it's
I'm more than happy to furnish any evidence that you want.
I understand, and I mean, I simply don't have time to pick up a full blown investigation into what occurred in Nova Scotia. But what I would say is, you know, when you're presenting evidence, like it's better to just write it out, because I'm hearing so many things. There are so many things you're referring to that I'm not privy to. So to build a timeline for me right now is I can't. I mean, not that I'm saying I don't believe you. I just would need more in front of me to establish each assertion, because it's like, okay, well, why didn't they go in? Didn't they go in? Time information. Where is time sourced from? This is how I operate. So I can't entertain the conversation about, well, this happened and this happened and this happened. Fair enough. I don't know what that constitutes. I think we saw several examples which are clear enough to say there was failures. It would seem there's more to me. You obviously know more about this than I do. And I can't, like,
you know what? How about this? If free time ever comes up, you let us know, and we'll start shoving some stuff your way so you can review it.
Yeah, and if you send me a synopsis at each time stamp with, like, why, you know, like, what is a fact, right? Because maybe it's like, maybe don't deliver the conclusion, maybe deliver the facts in written format. And that's why I do Cop Watch, right? I do the video, but then I do the write-up, because I know that it's difficult. Like, I understand the difficulty in conveying a timeline of information without being to visualize it and say, well, this is a fact, this is a fact, this is a fact that's been presented. And then, well, how do you extrapolate meaning from that, right? So that's where I can't extrapolate meaning from some related facts to why didn't they go in then? Well, I can't even say that they didn't go in, because I think there's assertions being made that they were in places where maybe GPS or timelines don't make sense.
Some did go in. Some clearly did go in, and those.
I don't have that. I don't have that in front of me. So I don't have that in front of me, so I can't speak to who went in, why they went in. These are all things that I think should come out. I simply don't have enough information to.
Here's one that you should be able to answer.
Yeah.
So let's say you were still working in Hamilton, and you know, there was a response came in of shots fired, and that there's multiple casualties. There's, you know, potential houses are on fire. Would your first, second, third, fourth option for relaying that information to the public be tweets? Or do you think that would be a normal standard operating procedure? Any police establishment anywhere?
I mean, as a former police officer, and you know, I never used Twitter before. I use it now. Even now, using Twitter, and even before when Twitter was out and I was a cop, I would never consider using Twitter to convey vital information. I think it's good for like sharing articles or videos and stuff like that. That, you know, a media officer though does that, right?
Mhm.
So if, let's say, a child goes missing or something like you're saying, there's some ongoing very dangerous situation, you'd say put a media release out. And the staff sergeant then goes up the chain. So I would never even make the decision to put out a tweet or to contact the media. You know,
Here's a good question. How
Yeah.
quickly do those things go up the chain?
It depends on the severity of the situation, what is known. And again, not to go down that rabbit hole, but what was verifiably known and then cascaded properly, you know, because Constable Schmiggins at the end of Dirt Road waiting to go in at this time knows a car went by. Maybe the radio was clogged at the time because somebody else saw a possible sighting and that information was 10 minutes late being conveyed. So who knew what and passed it along at what times, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, like, and then, okay, this staff sergeant or whoever the immediate supervisor is, you'd expect there'd be a duty supervisor brought in, an inspector or something like that immediately. So a lot of things are happening then, right? You're probably prompting the SWAT team or the RCMP ERU. Probably, this is speculative. You're prompting other people. You're getting maybe more cops in from neighboring jurisdictions. There's a lot going on. So media release, depending on who knew what, when, and how it went up, you know, you'd think if it was known very early on that there's a mass shooting and it's ongoing and he's intent on killing more people. But if you roll up on a house on fire, well, we know now what happens after that. But if you roll up to the first thing and maybe there's a homicide, you're like, holy shit, there's a homicide here. Does that mean that person knew at that time what was continuing to happen?
Okay, so good. Yeah, no, interesting. Now, given what you're saying, okay, to me, I see plausible deniability with Twitter. This is why they use Twitter. But let's just go with that. They just made a very poor operational decision. Okay, what time did they respond? 10:26. What time did they immediately encounter somebody who said, I was shot from somebody from a police car? That would be shortly right after that. They then found numerous bodies. An hour later, at 11:30, on Twitter, they say, oh, we're responding to a massive houses burning now also. An hour later, 13 bodies on the ground. They know all this. They know cop car. They know it's Wortman. They respond on Twitter, we're responding to a weapons complaint. It isn't until the next day at 8 a.m., I believe, 8 or 9 a.m.
I think it was 8:30, but yeah.
They reply on Twitter, we are now dealing with an active shooter. And all of the people who have come out and said, I didn't even know what the hell was going on. I had to find out from Facebook because somebody told me that there was a madman on my road, you know, causing carnage when I woke up in the morning.
You had people replying to the 11 p.m. Twitter post saying that there was multiple shots fired and people and houses burning. You had people replying at 4 a.m. saying, why isn't there an emergency alert at 4 a.m.? These people are replying on Twitter.
So for an hour, they knew about deaths, homicides, cop car, houses on fire. And you know what their Twitter line said? The one thing that they used? It had a cat rolling around on the ground. A GIF of a cat for an hour. Meanwhile, people are getting massacred, houses burning. Well, and then an hour later, they're going to say a weapons complaint. What is a weapons complaint defined as? Because you're a former police officer. What is a weapons complaint to you?
Well, I would say in the context of a public disclosure, it's something that should be of interest to people around. So there's lots of weapons complaints, but a public notification about a weapons complaint, probably means usually, and not RCMP Nova Scotia, a barricaded suspect or something like that, some kind of weapon, something like that.
Shots
and
fired. Dead bodies.
Well, I mean, yeah, like that's a gross overstatement. But again, I think we can identify like that the emergency system should have been used much sooner. But again, on the point of who knew what when, how many RCMP officers were in the immediate area of those killings? How many detachments did it cross over? How many dispatch systems do they have? What kind of chain of command needed to be funneled information for it to cascade back down 20 miles away? How does that work?
Heavily locked down, according to Campbell, he said it's, quote, heavily locked down area shortly after this all occurred.
Right. So
contained and heavily locked down.
You know, we assume that let's say the first officer contacts, and my understanding is a fire. The first thing was a fire or somebody saying a dressed up cop car.
Shots fired.
Shots fired.
And the gentleman says a dressed up cop car.
The first person that they encounter is a man who has been shot.
Yep.
And he said, with a woman, and he said, I have been shot by somebody who drives
who was in a cop car.
Who was in a cop car, a marked cop car, and I believe it's Gabriel Wart. He in the warrant, it seems to indicate that he believes it's Gabriel Wortman, and it was very public knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
Public knowledge down in Halifax that his girlfriend drove a cop car around in Halifax.
And I believe the police even reportedly mentioned to him that when he does bring that car out, he needs to have it on a trailer.
The RCMP specifically said, you if you're going to take this car out, please take it on a trailer.
So they knew about it.
They knew about it. They knew right away.
I think that's become clear enough for me to see as well, right? Like just from the news, people are saying it was just an open thing in the city. But again, what does that mean? So on one end of the spectrum, you have the RCMP show up. So this is just on one end. This is one possible.
Okay.
The RCMP show up, know it's Warntman that just shot somebody, don't know why and don't know what's coming. They're kind of in maybe a denied state. They're going, oh shit, that stupid asshole that we've allowed to have that cop car is just shot somebody. What the fuck? Maybe they start making phone calls. What is this guy doing? Not knowing that somewhere is already on fire, not knowing that more people are falling. And they're going, oh, for fuck's sakes. So then, then you start getting more stuff. Maybe there's a fire. Maybe there's another shooting. People start going, oh shit. Maybe something that they tried to hope wasn't actually happening and they couldn't believe it.
By 10:20,
it's happening.
Multiple fires.
Yeah, but at the same time, maybe the first cop who got that first bit of information doesn't know who Gabriel Wortman is. Maybe he's brand new and he fucking thinks, oh, what the fuck is Gabriel? Who has a cop car? This stupid shit. Now, that's probably not likely, but let's just say that they treat it as an individual event. Mm-hmm. Gabriel, and they put it on all points bulletin. Okay, look out for this guy who's driving a fucking car. How much period of time later there was a fire? Well, fuck. Okay, now there's more people being shot. And now where's the suspect?
I think there was already three structures on fire at the point that they responded.
Right. So at what point did they correlate the first set of information to the second, to the third? And that's what I would like to hear.
He said, if you listen to him on the 24th press conference, Campbell, he says almost right away that we encounter the first officer who responded encountered bodies who were shot laying in the road. He pulled back. 2 cars subsequently responded. But it's still I don't think anybody in their reasonable mind can say, one, you're going to use Twitter unless you're covering your own ass. And I think that's the plausible deniability that they needed to say, yeah, well, we did do something. Mm-hmm. We just didn't want, they're trying to play catch up, which is exactly what you said. Oh shit, it's that fucking Gabriel Wortman guy.
Well, I said that in relation to a possibility, but what I'll say is that they're going to, before Gabriel Wortman was apprehended or killed or whatever the case was, in the end, despite ongoing fuck ups, somebody eventually is going to go, who notified the public? Maybe they decided not to at a certain point because not enough information trickled, and then they all forgot. And then 8 a.m. rolls around, somebody comes in new, fresh, and they go, who's notified the public? So they go, fuck, we got to do that. So regardless of how late it is and what that means, they were going to do it before he got picked up. Like if he got picked up, I'm sure that tweet wouldn't have gone out as though, that was the only thing that went out. But of course they should have used the emergency system earlier. I would like to know why they didn't. And the biggest concern that I have is that with all the vetting documents and all that, we can't establish who knew what at what point and how did it go up.
Well,
So
I think we can assume at 10:26 or 10:30, let's give them 20 minutes even. Let's say 10:46. They knew about bodies, lots of bodies. They knew about a cop car. They've admitted that themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Why are they having a cat rolling around on the ground? And why is it then an hour later, they're going to say, oh yeah, we're responding to weapons complaint. And then not until, what did you say? 8:30 in the morning? The next day say, oh, by the way, there's an active shooter. How many lives have you put at risk? How many people are on Twitter?
I agree that, like, what I can say is that an emergency broadcast system should have been accessed sooner. But I think if you ask, why didn't you until 8 a.m., I can't answer that.
No, they never used the emergency broadcast system.
No, the Twitter, like the tweet went out with the totality of the circumstance. But again, asking why didn't they do that, or was that to cover their ass? Well, in my opinion, they were going to do that regardless until he got picked up, despite whatever oversight or ineptitude led to that. They're going to put it out. So I don't know.
They're going to continue using the same system they were using.
Or the only system that they know how to use, because I think I read something about potentially the emergency. They didn't know how to who to contact, or there's some
bullshit. 2 weeks prior on the Easter weekend, they used it twice.
Well, not only that, the people in the government there, the premier, I believe he even said that we reached out to the RCMP and
multiple times.
We have it ready to go.
Please, we're ready.
Just tell us what you want us to put on there.
Oh, we're working it out. We'll get there at some point.
Yeah.
And they never did.
Yeah, and that's what I can deduce. I mean, with certainty, I can say that they should have done that sooner. But I think to entertain the conversation about why didn't they, I mean, I can't answer that for you, man. I can't. There's no way.
We know you can't. I mean,
yeah. Well,
I'm not meaning to place you on the spot or be confrontational or anything.
Yeah,
I'm just fishing your side as both a former police officer,
right,
with lots of experience and that kind of stuff, and I'm also fishing your mind for your opinions on this as just a human being, as an individual. How does this strike you?
Yeah, and I think here's what I'm hearing. So it's an exercise, right? And what is possible. I do the same things. What are all the possibilities here?
Mm-hmm.
But I think when we're talking about something that's gravity, it's no longer philosophy. We're talking about facts and issue. So it's not like I can say, well, this failure happened and then this failure happened, and then that means that this one was a continuation of this one. I understand a lot of how these things work, and I understand that when you roll up on a crime scene, you may not immediately get what it is, right? Okay, there's 20 bodies laying on the ground. What the fuck? And somebody says Gabriel Wortman's driving around shooting people. Dispatch, who are they talking to there? Dispatch, Gabriel Wortman is driving around killing people. 10-4. What area does that encompass? Does that, you'd think that immediately goes out as a CPIC message to other divisions. Did that happen? Right? And at what time did those things happen? So I think to say, they should.
That's good. But yeah. What about the public? What about the people
I agree.
On Port Beach
but
Road?
I think it's to say that because it should have happened, to then say why they didn't or did something at a certain time. That's where the jump happens.
That is speculative, but I am operating with just facts of what time did they inform people, why. And
I want to know the same things.
You're talking
I want to know the same things. And I think that maybe I can shed light on asking the right questions, right?
Hmm?
What was the information that the first officer had contact with? Who did that go to? What jurisdictional area was advised and at what time? These are things that occur in inquests, right? So when there's shooting deaths in inquests, this is what happens. They print off the records of dispatch. They print off the records of the in-car messaging system, right? They say, officer, at 10 o'clock, you messaged so-and-so and said, come by my traffic stop. At 10:03, you said, can I get another unit here? At 10:05, there was shots fired in the drive. So that's a pretend situation. But to say that, well, because he messaged the other guy and asked for backup, was the call on the radio, what was that? And there was a shooting, so we know the message, we know that. But then to draw meaning from, let's say, a simultaneous request on a different channel.
Would you say it was a weapons complaint when you found bodies on the road and burning houses? Would you say that and remain with that line of thinking as a police officer, and that this not speculative, nothing of the sort. This is the facts. Would you, as a police officer, respond to the public and say to them for 9 hours, 9.5 hours, would you say to them, burning houses, known RCMP car, you know who the person is, and there's dead bodies lying everywhere? Would you say an hour after you found that out, that was a weapons complaint?
So
No. Yes or no?
No.
Would you do that?
Okay, but I'm a police officer, right? And that's what I see. Would I tell dispatch that, hey, dispatch, there's a weapons complaint? Now, I'm the police officer, right? Presumably, who is on the ground. I'm not the one who notifies the public. I'm not the one who decides when emergency systems should be used in Twitter, and I'm not a media officer. I'm not logged in. I'm the police officer on the ground. If somebody drove up to the scene, I would say, there is a mass casualty, looks like a homicide. Please avoid the area and tell people that you encountered to leave. Now, that's not what happened on Twitter, but I'm the guy in the front line. Probably what's going to occur is I'm going to sit at the crime scene in my cruiser looking around, right? As other units are spooled up to begin a search or whatever the case is, or containment.
Mm-hmm.
So I think to look at, this is what I'm trying to explain to you, to look at the RCMP as one holistic unit that failed in unison. There could be fracture points here, right?
Mm-hmm.
The first officer could very well have conveyed exactly what occurred.
I think
Now,
he did.
why didn't that happen? Well, because it has to go through dispatch, staff sergeants, inspectors, the superintendent's brought in, they notify headquarters. Headquarters has their input because who doesn't want to be involved, right? I saw the same thing in the Army, to be honest. And then that has to come back down. So me as a police officer, somebody walked up, and I did that all the time. People would walk up and say, why can't I go in there? And some cops say, none of your business. I would, inform people, listen, there was a homicide down here, okay? This is potentially still an active crime scene. Now, I don't know what happens when dispatch gets it. I can make requests. Dispatch, there's this situation. Please notify the other divisions and Halton, right? Now, I assume dispatch does that. But then what does that have? What happens then, right? If Halton gets it and the operator that receives messages is sleeping, well, you don't expect that to be the case. So there is an infinite number of failure points and circumstantial factors. What we can see is that they should have used the emergency broadcast system earlier, much earlier. But why didn't that happen? This is what we'll gather through, hopefully, their disclosure. It seems like that's not going to occur. Hopefully, then FOI, we can get it and figure out, why didn't you do that? Who didn't, could it be possible that the first person that showed up was Gabriel Wortman's best friend in the RCMP and he just wanted to make it go away? Hey, it's on the scale of possibilities, but I think that I would prefer to see much more information about who conveyed what information at what time and what decisions were being made, because there could have been a million other things going on. And through ineptitude, yes, they neglected to notify the public. But
So,
okay.
As a public, can we get that information with like simple freedom of information requests?
Well, that's what those warrants are. They're FOI requests, and they vet the documents. So that's who's deciding to take information out. So, are they gonna vet something that potentially puts them in a bind if there's a lawsuit? Maybe, right? Maybe.
That's why I think the only way is to depose these people under discovery,
I agree.
under the threat of perjury. You know,
I agree.
you either answer it or you don't, and you have a judge, hopefully, who is going to sit there and say, we're going to go by the exact criminal code for disclosure of evidence, and if it's protecting an ongoing investigation, to which I can naturally ascribe a couple, possibly, weapons, maybe. But I mean, those weapons have already been checked. They know them. They're just not disclosing them. And I have a suspicion. It's a suspicion, and it's speculative, but it's speculative based on a lot of evidence. And you know that I come from a family of lawyers, lots and lots of lawyers and judges. That's it. And so I'm very evidence based, and it is speculative. However, I believe that the RCMP are covering up their lack of dealing with this. Sorry?
Inept.
Oh, yeah, beyond inept. They knew what was happening. They knew who this person was, and they were hoping that they could make this go away. I'm not saying it's necessarily like a friend and he's like, you know, who responds to the scene. I'm talking about on the very top level, and they're like, oh shit, we really fucked up here. How can we get out of this with our ass in one piece? And so, you know, let's use Twitter, because then we have plausible deniability. We can say, well, we didn't tell you. We did tell you. We just thought this was the, quote, superior way of informing you. Even though we've used emergency broadcast, because we don't want to inform everybody in the province, because if we do, well, more eyes will be upon us. We know that there's only, how many people were using Twitter at that point? Following them? 60?
They had 60,000 or 40,000, I think, at that point.
40,000 people of a province of 1 million, and you can naturally assume that a lot of those are going to be press, current and former RCMP officers, government officials, etc., not civilians. So you're going to inform a very small, and of course everybody knows Twitter, your notifications, beep, beep, beep. Nobody wants that. It's always silent. So, and then they just left, by and large, till they could get the armored carrier to come in. But there were really great heroes, the ones that are unsung, untold, who actually did go in there. But they had to disobey orders to do it. To save those kids and to save those people who were potential victims.
And again, like what you were talking about at the beginning, I guarantee these ones who did go in, they're going to be punished. They're not going to be rewarded for going in to do the right thing.
Yeah, that goes full circle back to exactly what you were saying before, you know, and those people are going to get the hell brought on them because they did the right thing. Why do we live in a society like this where we're not reprimanding and holding these people because they have names? They were the ones that issued orders. Why are we not holding them personally and criminally responsible? Beyond, you know, start with a civil suit and then start naming them and charging them.
Yeah, I'm on board with that, right? If there was incompetence that led to that, I think that's a part of a large problem in policing, right? It's it's like I said, everybody's a winner until everybody's a loser. Like it's a compounding problem. I hope that, you know, if this is a catalyst to change that, if this isn't, there won't be.
There won't be, and that's the thing. I think people cannot leave this one just sit idle.
Yeah,
because they've got this time and time again. They've gotten away with this garbage, and they've got it in their mindset now. Okay, we can do this. And this one, if they really hoodwink people out of this one, and they pull the wool over all of us, we're screwed, man. And people just sit by and they're like, "Oh, what's on Survivor tonight?" You know,
Yeah.
they're not stepping up to the plate and saying, listen, I want something different in my society. I don't want that trash ruling a good police organization. I want police individuals who are going to protect me, the good ones, the heroes, the ones that went in. We want to celebrate those people, you know.
Yeah.
You know what? I know it's getting late, and I do have one
Yeah.
more question for you. I
Yeah,
don't
no
know if
problem.
Seamus, you have one more that you'd want to end off with.
Oh, I probably, Josh,
Yeah,
probably like, oh, that
I
damn
took
guy. Who is
THC
that?
oil 3 hours ago, so I'm just like sitting here, keep my eyes
Well,
open.
thank you.
The one question
I'll
I
do
did
one.
have, since you did work as a police officer, in your time as a police officer, did you ever hear, or was it common knowledge that things went missing out of lockup, or a gun that was in lockup all of a sudden is now just gone, or drugs that were in lockup are now just all of a sudden they're not there anymore? Is that
Oh,
something that was common?
Yeah, there was this incident in Hamilton where an inspector was, I think, arrested and charged for taking things out of the evidence locker. And that was, I think, in about 2010. I've heard allegations from some sources that in Toronto there was gun parts walking out of the armory. Like it's hard, right? But like it's not impossible. Things are serialized, and we see the reports. Like when I was in the military, I had a serialized gun. If you lose a piece of serialized kit, you're in a world of shit. You're going to be on your hands and knees off an entire field trying to find it. But it's not impossible, and we see the reports that like even the Canadian forces are losing tons of guns. How? I don't know. Where are they going? I don't know. But yeah, it's not unfeasible. And
I think that might be the person that you were referring to before. He came out with a report about RCMP weapons going missing, over 800 of them.
Yeah.
That the mob, what was it? The mob.
Oh yeah, mob infiltrator. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it may have been him that came out with that report. It was then published in National Post.
Yeah.
About missing weapons. Is it plausible that missing weapons ended up in Mr. Wardman's hands? Do you think that's plausible? Or
It's
RCMP
possible.
issue?
I mean, the reality is that if guns are going missing, that volume of guns are going missing. How many of them are going missing intentionally for profit? How many are going missing through ineptitude? How many get stolen and then sold? Right? Like there is, again, an infinite number of possibilities. It's possible that any gun came from a police officer in the commission of its use, because there are so many missing. We hope they're missing at the bottom of a lake, but we know they're not. So, right, like, you hope there can't be accessed, but I think there was a case where a cop left a gun in a bag in a car and it was stolen. And I think that one was recovered, but it goes to show that I'm sure many of them are changing hands for various reasons. So is it possible that he had a issued gun? Maybe, right? And maybe even, I think I was reading I think again, he had a 50 caliber sniper rifle, was potentially one of the alleged guns.
I haven't seen reference to that. I've seen reference to they've kind of played around with the different styles of guns, but I think they've settled on now 2 handguns and unknown make, unknown caliber, and 2 assault style rifles. Again, unknown makes and models. Are you familiar with what make and model of I did know the one, but I've forgotten. Maybe you know off the top of your head that the RCMP are issued for the assault
I imagine
rifle.
it's a Colt C8. I don't know for sure though. Probably a Colt Canada, if I imagine. That's what the Army uses.
I think it was SKS or something. It was
Patrol carbine.
Yeah, they've since the Moncton shooting.
Yeah,
they were all issued assault rifles.
It's essentially an AR-15 pattern gun, whether it's a C8 or an M4. It's all the same stuff to me, save and except for the magazine capacity and the select fire differentiation. But yeah, it's again, like, guns go missing from everywhere. Usually cruisers don't. But again, on the spectrum of possibilities, I mean, I think there's so many right now. I want to see what comes out. I prefer to look at things when they're totality. But what I can suggest is, just as closing out, the way they write warrants, put your evidence together, right? I think it's much easier to read through it and reference make an appendix. So what you do is like write out, at this date, this statement was given, reference appendix A. Then what we can glean from the search warrant is that at this time, this information was confirmed to be appendix B. So that's how I write search warrants. That's how they're written. And that's much easier for me than to go, okay, do reference. Okay, do reference. What can be drawn between the two, right? And then that's how I would treat it. Treat it the same way they do, right? When they're explaining something to a judge, structure your interpretations the same way as though you're presenting it to a judge, because that's essentially what's happening, right? The public, tender it to the public in a digestible format, and reference like appendices for your supporting documents.
Oh, well, that sounds like excellent. Yeah, I don't know.
Very good advice.
So that's very good
yeah,
advice.
because I don't mean to come on and say I don't know, right? But like, there are too many data sets and too many points for one person to track, right? And it's like when I told people my story about what happened, they heard the story, but it wasn't until they read it, right, completely typed out in chronological format, where they went, holy fuck, I can't believe that's what happened to you. And these are people that I told like directly. I said what happened, but when you're trying to explain things that involve different time scales and everything like that, it was like the year long, she hated me, then it crunch, and then fucking psycho shit. And then after, when you try to explain that big amount of information verbally, it's very difficult. But it's when you write it, what you'll find is that you'll read through it. And then this has happened with reports all the time. I would write the report, I was dispatched all the way to my conclusion, go bang, bang, bang. But then I read it and I go, oh shit, if somebody else was reading this, they wouldn't get it.
Yeah.
Right? So then I put in more supporting information to make it make sense. So like, I'm not sitting here saying you're wrong in anything that you've seen or your assertions to this point. I think it's healthy. And I think given the information that's coming in, it would also help to index what you currently know, right? Because more FOI documents are going to trickle out, and you're going to have to plug in what those say at certain time scales. So I find value in establishing a written chronology of what we know at this time, and then use different font colors for dates of disclosure, right? So preliminarily, this is what we think. It's in black. On April 1st, more documents were tendered. April 1st, document information will be denoted as blue, but it'll be put in chronologically in the timeline.
I like that.
Yeah. So and then you present that on an ongoing basis. People, they can read it and then look at, and then when more news comes out and more information comes out, then we can visualize the time scale here, right? Like, I've done cursory knowledge of it, and that's why I can't agree or disagree with anything, right? I can maybe explain some possibilities and how convoluted these fucking police services are, and like how many fucking checks and balances, and everybody's got to say, get their fucking say. Like, that's the shit that I get. And, at the same time too, I understand that we had a homicide on one occasion in Hamilton, and it was a young guy who got shot. He was dead in a parking lot, clearly dead. So we didn't move him. We maintained the sanctity of the crime scene. Well, his family showed up, and his family was going bananas. He was under a tarp, and his family was going insane trying to break into the crime scene. Now, I understand why they're doing that, right? I get it. We couldn't do anything until the coroner arrived, and due to budgetary constraints, or that night was busy, whatever the case was, the coroner didn't arrive for, I think, 12 hours.
Yep.
So all night, it was like a war zone. I was pushing back the family. I eventually had to put one of the family members in handcuffs because she was trying so vigorously to penetrate the crime scene and go to her brother. Now, I didn't want to do that. It was horrific.
Yeah.
I can't imagine. But I understand as a police officer what's going on. I can't control when the coroner shows up. I want the fucking coroner here now. This is fucking bullshit. I agree.
Yep.
Get the fuck, like, how can you have the expectation that a body's not going to move, victim of a homicide, before the coroner shows up and says yes, a death, and do a preliminary investigation? And you can't imagine this happening. I'm sitting there going, get the fuck over. See all the back end stuff, right? They just see what's in front of them, and they're getting invested. So that's kind of what I say with caution, right? Like the police, there are so many different cops that are involved in this, so many different layers. I want to know at what point, right? Usually I look at the top of the pyramid. Management's usually where it's fucked up. The last Periscope video I did on that, the mayor of Minneapolis came out and said, black people shouldn't just die because they're black at white hands. And I go, haven't you been the white mayor facilitating these people's employment for the last 2 years?
Yeah.
So don't try to race bait when you're just trying to deflect. What have you done about police accountability at the top? So that's, it's not to dismiss what you've seen, right? But it's like, okay, fair enough. This was said and then this was said. It's different. Why? Why did that happen? I want to know why. Yep. And I think given the gravity, I think they ought to be telling us. But that's why I say keep the pressure on. And the best way that you can scale this information to build pressure is to explain it chronologically in a very succinct format, right? With the key points and then appendices to support any big sets of information. That's what I'm saying.
Okay, well that's super advice. Yeah, I'm trying to organize because it's just a jumble. There's a lot of jumble.
Yeah,
it's a jumble. Anyways, on a given day.
Yeah.
Three other quick questions before I'm if I can before we wrap up. One,
try to stay with it.
Sorry,
I'll try to stay with it.
I'll be quick. One, is it possible that we can call on you in the future for kind of your expertise, opinion on things?
Absolutely.
Because
awesome.
you've got great knowledge of that, and that is something we lack.
Yeah, and we appreciate it because.
And I honestly I appreciate
we lack it.
I appreciate you guys letting me know how you're looking at the information, right? Because I look at it a certain way, and I might be looking at it in a biased sense as well, right? Just because I've been a cop in Hamilton doesn't mean when I see the stuff from the RCMP that I fully understand it. So you guys are looking at it through a different lens than I might be. And that's why it's good to come together with the information.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, now you've prompted me, prepared me that when I read more stuff, now I understand the timeline a bit better too.
Okay, super. Thank you.
Yeah,
thank you ever so much for tonight. It was amazing. The other two questions were just kind of on a side note. In your experience, is it commonplace, because in reading the Fatal Inquiries Act of Nova Scotia, I believe that a family member who requests an autopsy is entitled to that autopsy. When a death occurs, obviously unnatural circumstances, a full autopsy is done. Apparently, the RCMP are not allowing family members to have autopsies. Are you familiar with that ever in your experience in Hamilton?
No, and that, to go back to the coroner, that's a decision that they make. Again,
the coroner said that it was the RCMP.
I wouldn't even know. Honestly, I couldn't even speculate. I couldn't even guess an answer. We also have, the coroners are bound by certain acts. I haven't even read them, right? It's they have actually great deal of power in Ontario when it comes to death investigations. The coroners do. They really spearhead these investigations, coroners. They're ultimately, and if I recall correctly, they're ultimately in charge of what's going on with the investigations into homicides and deaths that are outside of, clearly natural circumstances. But yeah, for that, I'd no idea. The coroners deal with rules that it's like being a police officer. You deal with rules and regulations. So
you've never heard of any such thing though before?
Well, I mean, I wouldn't say that the fact that I haven't heard of that is indicative of anything, because this is such a
No,
unique
just in your
circumstance.
experience. Just in your experience.
Yeah, and it may have, like, yes, it may happen. I don't know. I don't track that. I've never even thought, given any thought consideration to that. It might happen all the time. That's way outside of anything that I'm, have awareness of. I'd say that.
Okay. Well, I'll leave it at that. I've badgered you enough. Thank you.
I'm glad you did bring that question up, though, because I was actually hoping you would. So.
Well, and you know what, though? That's another thing where if that supports any other conclusion that you guys have about what happened, index it, right? Put that, so you'd say in the chronology, the coroner said something, then find the Coroner's Act or whatever they're operating under. I think you mentioned it there, and find the supporting information and index that either on an appendix or directly below it. So when somebody's reading that, it's not like, well, the coroner said this, and they said this is why they're doing it. Actually write that out so people can see it and go, okay, so the Coroner's Act says that you may decide to, or does it say you shall, right? So those are important, nuanced little things that I would suggest. Put it in the chronology as an appendix, put the supporting act that they're referencing, and present it in that fashion, right? And then that's something I can learn, because I don't Coroner's Act, I don't even know, right?
Yeah, it seems contrary to my reading of the Fatal Inquiries Act. If a member of the family requests, and I do know somebody personally who has requested it, and they were told all autopsies are being withheld as per order by the RCMP. And I was like, oh, that's rather interesting. You as a family member cannot look at an autopsy of your own family member, even though your Fatal Inquiries Act of Nova Scotia says they have to provide you one.
Yeah. There maybe is a very limited number of possibilities why that would be relevant. So it seems weird. The event's over. The substance of the event is over. We think, right?
You'd think they would be doing autopsies on almost everyone.
Well, it doesn't sound.
They did do them. They're just not going to issue them. And that was according to Tara, right? And so, and they're not going to provide those to family members. And I don't know. Again, this is speculative, but I just have a feeling that it may have something to do with bullets that are possibly recovered, and they don't want that coming out as to what that might be. But it's totally
and that's exactly what I thought as well. Like, what can you glean from those that would compromise a current investigation? Potentially the bullets used, but an autopsy isn't going to give you forensic data on what the bullets were fired from, right? With the rifling and all that kind of stuff.
Like what you said earlier, though, you could be onto something with the fact that they don't want the caliber to be released because they want to be able to find out where these guns came from, because they already have said that they probably come from the U.S.
Yeah, and
except for like one or two or something.
And let's say that the bulk of people were shot with the new 6.8 chamber, and let's say there's some guy in upstate New York who's like just offloading tons of that ammunition type into Canada, like across the border. And there's not many people that, there could be some novel explanation about, like, or unique rather, information about the bullet type. If it was like a strange bullet, like maybe it identifies a certain gun shop. Maybe they want to do surveillance on straw purchases. There could be concurrent operations going on in the US about gun smuggling, right? So this is,
or could this implicate some of the agencies in the U.S. that have been involved with gun smuggling?
Well, and that's, and that's, again, not, that's not an unfathomable thing to say with Operation, what was it in the States?
Paperclip.
Roadrunner?
What was it, Paperclip?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so they were running guns across the border. So who knows? But yeah, keep the pressure on. That's what I'd say, right? Keep the pressure on.
Do you guys get issued special ammunition? Is it prohibited ammunition? No?
No, but, I think ammo has run information on it.
Oh.
So, if you bring in a box of Smith & Wesson, which I think is what it was, and you dump it all on the table, I'm pretty sure shell casings and bullets alike have run information on them. So, if you identify a batch that's given to the police, that same box may be distributed through civilian channels.
Okay.
So, yeah, potentially though, right? Like that could be, but again, through an autopsy, you're not gonna, they're not gonna do. That's like that. Maybe. Well, yeah, that's forensic. That's further forensic identification. They could have already done that. They may be able to do that very quickly in this circumstance. But yeah, the autopsy, that's weird, and I would expect to see that coming out, or at least an explanation about why it's not happening. Because that's troubling to hear, right? Like the family members want some answers.
Oh, some family members want some answers. Yeah, that's for sure.
Yeah, probably an understatement, right?
And frankly, I think Canada deserves answers because, I mean, this is our national police force, and this is something that worldwide, any gift store that you go to, they always sell a Mountie stuffed bear or whatever, right? I mean, this is very identifiable as Canadian culture. It's something worldwide known. It's something that should have a very untarnished reputation.
Yeah, we don't want the mark being left that there is a huge black blemish all over this organization, because like you say, a lot of people look at Canada and they say the Mounties.
Yeah. Well, and a lot of people look at the FBI, right? Even I think Dan Kinsel's been to FBI Academy on his CV. A lot of Canadian police chiefs go down to FBI Academy, but then you think that's that is that's cool. It's impressive. Then when you find out about FISA warrants, all these issues that are now coming out about how the FBI operates and the political practice and potential political practice, potentially on both sides. Again, that information seems more clear now, but there's a lot of spin going on. So yeah, like, oh wow, you went to FBI Academy. Did you learn how to write FISA warrants? So it's just like the RCMP is the same, right? It's like, what happened? Why did it happen? How are you getting better? And if you're not answering any of those things, I think we're all making the assumption, this is something I can assume, that you don't want to get better. Right?
Yeah.
Then it's like, why?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's scary to think about, that I mean, because to me, a person or an entity there also should be operating with, listen, I make mistakes. We all make mistakes. How do I improve from them? First of all, I admit them and acknowledge them, and then I find actions to rectify that, to make amends and remedy them. So
well, okay. Think like, I'm going to give you like a thought experiment here. Think about what you just said. All the factors. You have to acknowledge them, right? Think about them. Everything you just said.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I say that as things scale up, the complexity scales up. So you scale up to you make mistakes. Well, let's say your family makes mistakes, right? Well, if a family's making mistakes and there's like, something going on in the family, the ability to correct that becomes a bit more complex, right?
Yes.
That's even within a house. So let's say a city's fucked up. Well, now you're dealing with counselors, you're dealing with fucking police people. Well, let's say the province is fucked up. Now you're dealing with ministries, dealing with municipalities, dealing with consultants, dealing with fucking this, that, and the next thing. And the federal government is even more fucked up. So, you look at it as yourself and you say, well, I just have to do these things, these key factors, and then I'll improve. But you do that, you have to acknowledge that you have a problem. That might be an issue for a lot of people in the public sector. Then you have unions that are hell-bent on excusing certain people. So even if the person, right, then you have management who may or may not want to lean on the person, either way, for no good reason. You have city councilors who become involved. You have the OIPRD or oversight bodies who may or may not want to ignore it, depending on what influence is being shown. Then you have like factors like the news picks it up. So, like I just mentioned, the Minneapolis mayor. This is why things are so fucked, because there are so many interests that are not the public's. The interests are not aligned with the public. For example, I went to an inquest for a police shooting. It was not a good police shooting in Hamilton. Okay, I think the cop was scared. The guy had his hand in his the front of his waistband, and he never pulls it out. Nothing really changes, and this is on video, and the police officer shoots him. So I did a whole thing on that, but I actually went to the inquest, and I sat and I listened, and the officer had the chief's lawyer there.
Wow.
And his lawyer and the union.
Wow.
So I'm going, we're not going to learn and get better
Yeah.
for what happened here, right? Realistically, the answer is the officer could have practiced a bit more situational awareness and took points of cover rather than trying to engage somebody who he thinks on good reason has a gun, but he hasn't demonstrated he has a gun. And the officer starts getting succumbed by fear because he's standing in the middle of the road, and he shoots. That's what I think happened, right? Just looking at this video, and I actually drove him home the day. So the inquest was many years later. I drove the officer home that day. And when that is probably the answer, but you have fucking 3 lawyers with competing interests, a union and a prosecutor, and the jury's there. This is the issue, right? So I've seen this on a smaller scale, just in a single shooting, right? Now you talk about the complexity of fucking Halifax police, Dan Kinsella. There's a difference there based on what I've heard. Then you have RCMP. You probably have constables who give a shit, but you might have management who fucking, for whatever reason, at certain phases and certain escalations of information, failed. And then you have different RCMP detachments who might be trying to fucking blame each other because they don't want to wear it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, then you have the province maybe getting information from tainted sources, and fucking police unions and contract negotiations, and fucking the PMO is involved now. You know what I mean? Like, this is such a clusterfuck, and it always is. This is why I said in that video, we already knew they were fucked up. They pretty much all are.
Mm-hmm.
And it comes down to like a lack of individualism, a lack of what do you do to add value. That's why I try to put things in economic terms. What is it that you do that adds value to the transaction? The transaction is you're being paid to render a service for the public. Do you add value to that transaction? If you don't, then you shouldn't be employed.
Yep.
If you do, then your employment should be continued. That's simple. But Canada in general, right? Like, if you have employees, you have to give them 3 strikes. You have to give them 3 strikes. And then now it's to a point where they'll just say you harassed them or looked at them the wrong way, and there's a lawsuit. So it's compromising so many avenues of output that should be fluid. You know, like these things need to be moving. Police need to be able to train better. They need to be able to implement new things quickly. But even for use of force, right? I'll just say this. I'll keep going as long as you want me to. For use of force, I have mentioned so many fucking videos, beanbag shotguns. I say, why cops need beanbag shotguns? Tasers are unreliable. Beanbag shotguns, you can repeatedly shoot very quickly somebody and stop an engagement from becoming lethal for the officer or the subject.
Mm-hmm.
But the issue is the fucking police services have to go to the ministry to test that shit. And then they have to get budgetary fucking either from the province through a grant or from the municipality. So something so simple and so effective, like a beanbag shotgun or a rubber bullet, like small MP5 kind of thing, there are so many hoops to jump through that they themselves have fucking created.
Yeah.
It took so long to approve a taser, you know? And they
Again,
still
it seems like the major
cops
theme
still
here is
carry pepper spray.
bureaucracy.
Bureaucracy. Yeah.
It's bureaucracy. And that's something that I can say with certainty exists, right? I don't have to be out in Nova Scotia to know that it's a bureaucratic fucking nightmare because they're government.
Yep.
I've worked government in federally and municipality. And that's what I know, right? They're bloated bureaucracy. So that's why I try to step back to that on all occasions, right? Like, unless I know something, it's like, what I do know is that there's probably a bureaucracy. So when dispatcher hears the thing, oh no, my supervisor's on lunch and they're the only ones, they have to authorize me. So where are they? You know, like, people are fucking afraid to act. That is an issue too, right?
Yes.
So, and that's institutional. That's maybe not individual ineptitude. That could be institutional ineptitude.
Yep.
Right. So you could have people that want to work hard, but they're just like, I don't have fucking clearance. I don't have the tools to do this job.
Yep.
Right? I was told many times not to fucking do things that were outside of the public interest, you know, or like that were inside the public interest. So I try to do something. They say, oh, you can't do that. You can't drive that guy there. We're not a taxi service. And I'm like, well, how about investing on the front end? If I drive this person who's involved in a dispute home, fucking problem solved.
Yeah.
But if you let them walk, they're going to get in a fight 3 minutes from now.
Yep. Yeah,
But
it's
that's the thing.
interesting.
They discourage you to just fucking do things that are valuable.
It was interesting watching what is it? Serve and Protect. I don't know if you've ever watched that before.
Maybe.
It's a Western Canada show that was produced.
Okay.
It was just like old. It was a long time ago, but not that long ago. But it seems like forever ago.
Yeah.
And the way that police officers behaved by and large then versus today, it was things like, yeah, okay, you're drunk, but you know what? Stop driving and I'm driving you home.
Mm-hmm.
Or I'm going to wait here and make sure that you get a taxi cab. I mean, there's a lot more interaction on a personal level and things like that. A lot more personal accountability. It speaks to what you're saying about the bureaucratic stuff. Yeah, I mean, it is absolute nightmare. However, can we just resign it just to that? The differences are going to have to start with people just saying, you know what, I'm going to take the risks. I'm going to speak out. I'm going to do things. And I'm hoping and praying that that's going to happen. I don't know. And that cycle will break.
For this one, I think you're going to see a lot, to be honest, because there's so many people involved that I think you're going to see that. I think for things that are less heinous, you see a lot of whistleblowers. So, I foresee that happening. But on the point of like back in the day in the 70s, what was occurring actually back then was cops were going to domestic disputes, and the female could be like bleeding and all bloodied. And they go, hey, do you want to, charge your husband? And she goes, no, because she's terrified. It's domestic terrorism, as they call it, right? And it's accurate. She looks at the husband, she goes, no, okay, see you later, right? And then cops were just leaving. So the government identifies this issue, and it is an issue. But what do? A measured balance approach? No, they come in like a fucking wrecking ball, and they say, we have a mandatory charge policy for domestic disputes now. If there's any evidence, you have to charge. So I had to charge somebody one time, a young lady, for throwing an empty coffee cup at her boyfriend.
Oh my God.
Because it was recorded on the 911 system. The witness goes, oh, she just threw something at him. So I show up and I go, did you throw something? And she goes, yeah, I threw a coffee cup. And I went, fuck. And it was on the dispatch system. So, what do you want to do? Insubordination? Not charge? Right? So, sorry, but that's the point. I mean, discretion in that they were fighting, of course, but there was no physical hitting. But discretion at that point is fair and balanced. I have to make the decision, but they're trying to alleviate risk from everybody.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, oh, you're fucking too stupid, Josh. You're too stupid to figure out if this is a domestic terror incident or if it's two young kids that are dummies and they're fighting and they're all fired up, right? I once had a staff sergeant tell me to arrest a gay couple fought. They're all drunk. And the staff sergeant directed me, says, you go arrest them, because they had legit, there's nothing there. And it was a problem that had solved itself. But because that policy exists, mandatory charge, and because the staff sergeant thought there was enough evidence, he wanted me to go arrest two people that have never been in trouble with the police before. Wow. For domestic assault. Both of them, dual charges. That didn't happen. I won't elaborate on it because it implicates, people.
Sure.
Yeah. But, we made that go away. Now, I had to take on even more fucking risk, because if that policy didn't exist, the only risk is that they kill each other. Then I have to explain why I didn't arrest. But now there's a mandatory charge policy. The staff sergeant goes, I think there's evidence enough. They're being deceitful in what they're telling you because they're talking in unison now. They're back together. And I'm going, wasn't that a pretty good fucking reason to let this slide?
Yeah.
But he goes, no, you go arrest them. No, that didn't happen. They don't even know the jeopardy that they're fucking in. And if it wasn't for a cop like me, if it was some other cop that goes, okay, right? But that's what they do. They try to take every decision of the officer. So this is why I understand when an officer hears something and they're like, I'm not allowed to tell the other division, right? Yeah. This has to go through fucking the superintendent. This is the stupidity of what's going on. Mm-hmm. It really is. Mm-hmm. So that's a long answer, man. I fucking went on.
Wow. No. Everything is golden nuggets.
I sure hope that more people like you sign up to be police officers in the future, because it'll be a really sad future for my kids to grow up in if people like you don't do that and take that role on.
Well, I applied to be reinstated before I started this, actually. I got a lawyer. I went through the union. They didn't like what I had to say about them. So they didn't tender like a doctor's note saying I was fit for duty, etc. But before I started Hamilton Cop Watch, I said, you know what? I don't like doing this shit, man. I actually really liked going out, enjoying my job, dealing with the public.
Yeah.
Because it was fun. It was like, it's actually challenging to go to new situations and try to problem solve for people and try to help people. And, I said, fuck, I know if I do the Cop Watch, it's just going to be shit show. And it adds value. I think it's more valuable than me specifically being a cop and trying to just do a good job. Like, I think I'm shedding light on issues that aren't happening, but I quite honestly would rather be back doing the job. And, I know how the drama works now. I know who the players are. I understand that the union's not going to protect you. Have a fucking lawyer on retainer. So I wasn't like, you know what I mean? I was like, I'll go back there. I'm not being friends with any of you motherfuckers. Like, the what I've seen is disgusting and I want to do work. But the chief said no. Just one word. 2 months after I applied for reinstatement, he said no. So I said, well, fucking green light. So yeah, like but I don't know, man. There's a lot of cops that had the same attitude as I did, but how many of them are just going to say, fuck it, I'll just do what I'm told?
Yeah, that's scary, because
that's what I'm afraid.
Cops, like, we need police officers like you and police officers like that went down Portapique Beach Road to help with their orders. They're still they got people's interests in mind, their hearts and their soul is about service and protection.
Yeah.
Not just about a paycheck, which is
okay. The cops that went down the road. So the staff sergeant that I had a contention with, that she was inept. And this is a fact, right? So I can convey what I think, but a fact was that she spent 10 years in the training branch, got promoted twice there. So that's not a good way to get promoted. That's the backwards of how you get promoted, by hiding an administrative position and in the training branch and then coming out to a year in patrol before you automatically get inspector. But here's the thing, that person, right now, it's like the pit bull analogy that I said, that person exists. They shouldn't be a staff sergeant. They're inept. So I look at the system. Why is this person being enabled? But in any event, inspectors show up to SWAT team calls, right? And you can have the SWAT team commander there, but the inspector's calling the shots. So that same lady that I think is incredibly inept, was promoted through cronyism or nepotism, whatever the case is, could show up and be directing a SWAT team on what they need to do. Wow. So to your point about the Nova Scotia, right? You might have cops sitting there going, what the fuck is going on? And you're always aware that there's more going on. Why are we being held? Right? And eventually it gets to a point where it says, fuck it. You know what? The staff sergeant's fucked up. I'm dealing with this.
Yeah.
And, I didn't hear about that before this. So that's why I'm just, saying as a hypothetical. But this is what happens, right? You get some moron who shouldn't be in the position they're in, and they're telling you what to do, good or bad. Go arrest that gay couple. Sit on that road, right? Oh, you're the SWAT team? I don't give a shit what you know. I'm fucking here, and I'm a virtue signaling moron. And that's all I care about. Like, that's it. That's all that person cares about. So, and that's going to be telling the SWAT team what to do. So I understand, like this Nova Scotia thing, you might have one just dumbass who fucked it all up. Mm-hmm. Just shit the bed completely. And it might be a lot of them. Might be an entire division. Might be Halifax too. Maybe it's the province is fucked up and, their systems weren't in place. This is what I want to start knowing that shit. Right. Mm-hmm. That's good stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, you know what? I think we should end it there because I know it's been a while and I know it's late for you. So
yeah,
I want to thank you for coming on and spending all this time with us, man, because it really helped shed a lot of light. So
I hope I did okay. Like, I hope the edit fucking.
Now, you know what? I'm going to put your link to your Twitter in the description. I'll put your channel in the description, and definitely everybody go and subscribe to him on YouTube. Follow him on Twitter because
thank you.
You've got a straight attitude and you're not giving anybody bullshit. So I can respect that. Yeah. And thanks to Adrian, thanks to Seamus for coming on and joining us because it was a very important topic. So I'm sure we'll have to set this up again in the future because there's more.
There's always going to be more, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Sadly.
All right,
But
Steve, Seamus.
good people like you will clean it up.
Well, and you guys too, right? Just taking an interest is what's important. This is what we all need to start doing, right? In whatever part we contribute.
Mhm.
Yes. We all have a role.
Yep, absolutely.
Awesome.
All right,
All right,
thank
guys.
you.
All right,
Well, you
thanks
have
so
a
much.
good rest of your night.
You too, brother.
Take care.
Cheers.
Okay, bye now.
Bye. Oh, that was good.
That was good.
I don't even think there any editing needs to be done.
No. Well, there'll be a little bit, but not much.
Do you mind if I have a copy?
Oh, of course.
I'm just going to throw it up as is. Like, it's long, but
Yeah. Do you want the unedited? Like, because, well, like, there's just like the part where we were trying to fuck around with our screen sharing. I was going to clip that out.
oh, okay. Yeah, no, that's probably not necessary. There's
Okay.
only one mistake I made in the whole thing, which was I said about the cage. The cage is true, as in where was the reference? I think it's from, and it got validated. So you have to put the pieces like different things together, but
Yeah.
the cage was validated because I think Frank magazine originally reported it, that she escaped through the cage, and then they've come out now and said, oh, she was thrown in the back of the police car and quote, then the blacked out somehow escaped.
That's fucking crazy.
Right. So
Hey, I'm going to close this. Are you going to be up for a bit?
yeah, oh yeah.
Okay, I'll give you a call. I'm just going to roll a joint.
All right.
All right.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, bye.